Hello and welcome to a brand new episode brought to you on the Four-Eyed Radio Network. If you want to see more shows, check out foureyedradio.com, Sorry about that.
This Four-Eyed Radio production is brought to you by America Joy Print Shop. All your printing needs taken care of in one convenient place. Visit americajoy.com for business cards, flyers, banners, decals, car wraps, and more. Visit americajoy.com.
Bond. James Bond. Shaken, not stirred.
Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed.
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.
For your eyes only, darling.
I never joke about my word 007.
For England, James?
Come in, Univex. James Bond here.
Am I going to have a problem with you, Bond?
Allow me to introduce myself.
You're that secret agent! That English secret agent from England!
No, you're cleverer than you look.
Still better than looking cleverer than you are.
My God, what's Bond doing?
I think he's attempting re-entry, sir.
007 reporting for duty.
Hello, the name's Berkeley, Ziggy Berkeley, from Cinema on the Rocks. And with me is Eric Dewey from Socially Awkward Studios. And you are listening to Her Majesty's Secret Podcast on the Four-Eyed Radio Network, where we discuss bondage, James Bondage. And today, our episode features Pussy Galore and Solitaire and Mayday and lots of other people, because we're discussing Bond girls for our episode that airs before Valentine's Day.
Yes, this ought to be a fun one. I had a lot of fun compiling these lists that we're going to go over today. Just not just in compiling them, but just in kind of reliving some of the bits and pieces of the movies where these girls play into. And there were some great ones throughout the series, but there were also some we'll say less than great ones. We're going to discuss both here today.
Yeah, and we're going to find out the answer to the age-old question, did Eric put Xenia on a top?
I don't think anybody is going to be extremely surprised at my top of the list. I really don't think that it's going to be a shock to many people, you included. But
we're going to be actually doing 3 lists today. We're going to first go through naughty Bond girl names. We're going to talk about our bottom 007 Bond girls and our top 25 Bond girls. Now, this covers a lot of ground, but we're going to first get into the names. Everybody seems to, when you mention the term Bond girl, it's generically figured, oh yeah, they've got some kind of naughty name.
Yep.
But when you really look at the long list of Bond girls, and there are 3 to 4 times as many Bond girls as there are Bond movies out there. And by the way, we are using as our standard criteria the 23 Eon films from Dr. No to Skyfall, and we're also including Never Say Never Again.
Yes.
But when you look at that whole list, there are very few that actually have naughty names. Exotic, contrived, yes. But naughty, not quite so many as you would have thought.
There were some, though, and the ones that were there were good ones. So did you compile your list in order, or are we just doing a random 7?
Nope, I compiled mine as a top 007 of Bond girl names.
Okay.
Naughty Bond girl names.
Perfect.
So going from 7 to 1. And just the fact that it's naughty isn't enough. It has to be naughty in an interesting or creative way. There's at least one I can think of that's a complete throwaway. In fact, I'll tell you what it is that did not make my list at all, because it was such a cheap joke. And that was Chew Me from the Man with the Golden Gun. I mean, that was just bottom of the barrel throwaway bad joke of a name. I just could not include it.
Yeah, I didn't include that one either. It would have made my bottom list of naughty Bond names, but definitely not my top 007 list of Bond names.
Though it does go along a fine tradition of funnily named Asian restaurants. I think just about every major town in the U.S. and Canada has a Fuck You someplace. I can think of at least 2 that I have seen personally. I used to live near a restaurant called the Chewy Ho. But
delicious.
Yeah. So with that in mind, Eric, what do you have for your number 007 naughty Bond girl name?
Now, my 007 name, the last one on my list, this one made the list because almost the best part of the movie in which this name was featured was the dirty joke used by this name. Even though the name itself is not dirty by itself, I felt...
Oh my God, you didn't.
I did. I felt that even though the name itself is not dirty by itself, they used it so just in your face, bad dirty joke in the movie. I just had to include it, and that is Christmas Jones from obviously from The World Is Not Enough. My list got formatted incorrectly. I'm like, Christmas Jones was not in Diamonds Are Forever. I don't know what happened. I'm like, wait a minute, that list did not collate properly. But yeah, it just, obviously the name by itself, Christmas Jones, okay, whatever, it's not a dirty name, but the joke, which we had to include even in the intro to our show, that Christmas only comes, I thought Christmas only came once a year. The fact that it was just so blatant, so in your face, I'm like, well, they made it dirty, so I included it, but it is at the bottom of my list. It is my last of the list. What do you have for number 7?
What I had is a cheat of a different sort. It may or may not have been an actual name that was of a character. We don't know, because it was presented in a way of, this is the name, like, no, it's not. Yeah, you're just going to have to trust me here. It's a way in which the franchise kind of made fun of itself. Stephanie Broadchest, which may or may not have been Vesper Lynd's cover name in Casino Royale. I like how they subtly poked fun at themselves without making it farcical, and that is that correct style of name, and it's just a fun name. So it's just the one throwaway line, I am Arlington Beach, and you are Stephanie Broadchest, and not, you're just going to have to trust me.
Yeah, that was a good one, too. I didn't have that one on my list, but yeah, definitely a good choice. What did you have at number 6 on your list of naughty Bond girl names?
At number 6, I had a name that you don't actually hear during the course of the film. You get hinted to what it is if you have a creative enough mind. And in theory, the name itself doesn't have to be dirty, but it's really easy to make it dirty, and it's really creative, and it's really fun. Confirmed in the credits, Strawberry Fields from Quantum of Solace.
Strawberry Fields.
Forever.
That definitely is a good one. And I definitely, like, see, you have to think dirty for that to be dirty, though, because otherwise you just...
She's a gorgeous redhead. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, anyway.
No, I'm not saying that I didn't think that. I definitely went there in my own mind, but yeah, I can agree with you there, definitely.
So, what do you have for number 6 of naughty Bond girl names?
My number 6 is Mary Goodnight. It's so perfect. I mean, Goodnight. Yes, obviously we're going to have a good night. There's only one name with good in it that's better than that, and we'll get to that in a little while. But for me, Mary Goodnight definitely brings of a name that's a promise, and I like that. Obviously, that was in The Man with the Golden Gun. I thought it was great. I liked it.
If it had been attached to a different character, I could have gone along with it, but I just can't. She's not on this list for me.
She is on another one of my lists, and we'll find that out in a little while, too. But I went complete. I just did not even bother with the quality of character or quality of acting or anything like that for the names list. I just went straight with the names.
I understand, but even at that, I found a little more fun to be had with other names. So that name attached to a different person might have been in contention for like the number 7 spot, but nothing higher for me.
All right, well, fair enough. But what did you have then at number 6? Or at number
Strawberry
5.
Fields.
Yeah, number 5 is what I meant. I'm trying to reorder my list as we speak because somehow... Okay, so I went high-tech again, like I did with our song episode. I went high-tech. I put all my choices into an Excel spreadsheet. I gave them scores based on different criteria, and then I collated my list based on those scores, and then I went in and, did some tweaks like, okay, yeah, maybe my scores say that, but here's what I really think. And somehow when I reordered this list into order, it didn't reorder the movie names along with the character names. So they're all mismatched and out of order, and I'm like, it's driving me nuts, and now I'm drawing lines from one to the other to where they're actually supposed to be. So,
see, this is why I reorder my Excel cells manually.
It worked on all my other lists. I'm looking at my my worst list and my best list, and those ones are perfect. So I don't know what happened there.
Well,
just this
well,
naughty
Eric
list.
is crying over his Excel sort order. Something that may bring a smile to anyone's face. My number 5 naughty Bond girl name, Plenty O'Toole. Named after her father, no doubt, in Diamonds Are Forever. There's just no need to have that name left to your imagination. It says exactly what it means, and attached to Lana Wood, it says exactly what it means. It's just shameless and lots of fun. So I couldn't not have Plenty O'Toole on this list.
I definitely agree with you there. Plenty O'Toole deserves to be on this list, and she does make my list as well. We'll get to her in a little bit. But for me, my number 5 is one you already mentioned at the top of the show. I will, spoiler alert, she might be higher on other lists. But on this list, for just naughty names, one of my all-time favorites, Xenia on the top, from GoldenEye, obviously. I love the name. I love the character. I love the actress who plays her. Everything about it is fantastic. And of course, On a Top describes the character so perfectly, as well as being a naughty name. It actually, definitely tells you exactly where she wants to be. So that's my number 5.
I have to agree with you. If this had been a top 8, it would have been my number 8. But she did not make my list.
I'm going to cry now. No, I'll be all right.
So what do you have for number 4, sir?
My number 4 is the previously mentioned name with good in it that I thought was better than Goodnight, and that, of course, is Holly Goodhead. That's one of the most directly dirty names, I think, in any of the films. I mean, it's right out there. It's just like blatant in your face. This is naughty. But it's also fantastic because it's just realistic enough to get past the censors. So that's my choice from Moonraker, Holly Goodhead.
Well, I can't disagree with you at all because my number 4 choice for naughty Bond girl name is Dr. Holly Goodhead from Moonraker. Just as you said, in somebody's face. It's just so blatantly naughty, and it was invented wholesale for the movie. It's not one of Ian Fleming's creations. And the funny thing to me about this name, and it cracks me up, is that it took me years to get that joke. Because, of course, I first watched Moonraker as a kid, back in the days when you could still be a kid and not necessarily know what head referred to. So, but now I get it. Now it's even funnier. So, I always thought it meant she had a good head on her shoulders because she was smart. Honestly, when I was a kid, that's what I thought. And realistically, she does. She does have a good head on her shoulders. I mean, for Christ's sake, she's an astronaut. But yes, so Holly Goodhead from Moonraker is my number 4 naughty name in the Bond series.
Awesome. So we have one in common on this list, which actually kind of surprised me when we're only dealing with 7, that we even have one that matches up exactly.
Oh, I bet we're going to have one more that does. Just
probably.
Call me crazy, but...
It's very possible.
But at my number 3 spot, we have another name that was never used on camera in the film. You only find out about it in the credits. In fact, it's not referred to at all, which is really too bad because I love this name. This name makes me giggle whenever I hear it. And that would be Dr. Molly Warmflash from The World Is Not Enough.
I think I totally missed that one altogether because I might have very much included that one had I thought about it. But yes.
For those who don't remember, she is the person who had to clear Bond medically and, of course, said that he had an outstanding stamina, portrayed by Serena Scott Thomas, who refused a body double. Good for her. But just Molly Warmflash. That's just such an awesome name. I love it.
Dr. Warmflash. All right. Yeah, that's definitely a good one.
So who do you have at number 3?
My number 3, now we're getting into the ones that are really just kind of very, very blatant. And of course, the 2 names with kitty cats in there had to make the list. And so number 3 on my list is Octopussy from, obviously, Octopussy, I think. That's the right movie, right?
One would hope so. The funny part is the name wasn't even originally designed to be naughty. It was actually the nickname of somebody that Ian Fleming knew in life. and the name derived from the person's fascination with octopi. It was just, it wasn't even meant to be that way, but you can't help but take it that way.
Anything with pussy in it, unless you're directly referencing a cat, and even then, it's still going to be a little dirty. But it's almost blatantly in your face in this case. So yeah, it's kind of right there.
It is. So what about your number 2?
Number 2, for me, number 1 and number 2 are pretty much the names themselves seem to be exact opposites of each other, or not opposites, I should say, but tie in together very well. So my number 2 was a little bit further down on your list, and that's Plenty O'Toole. Not a huge character in the movie, not
not in that way.
Yeah, well, hope not. But just a fantastic name, and of course, like I said, probably very ties in with with what I'm guessing are probably our number 1 picks. But yeah, Plenty O'Toole. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to think of that as extremely dirty. So that's my number 2 pick.
All right, and my number 2 pick was your number 3 pick, Octopussy, a name that was not supposed to be dirty, but is, because it is. Because, let's face it, it just is.
Yeah, very much so.
However, it's not nearly as dirty as what I am guessing both of us picked for number 1. 1, 2, 3, Pussy Galore!
Yes.
From Goldfinger.
It has to be. I mean, and it was not even that it was like, some of the names they throw in there and you're just supposed to get it on your own that it's dirty. This one, they threw it right in your face. I'm Pussy Galore. Of course you are.
Of course you are.
It was blatant. It was obvious. It was in your face, and it was wonderful. So, yeah, obviously, this list couldn't exist without that name, and it had to be at the number 1 spot, obviously.
Just the pinnacle naughty name, not just in the Bond series, but in all of movies for all time. I mean, even the ridiculous porn star names that are out there, none of them will ever be as good as Pussy Galore, as far as being just naughty, but not quite obnoxious yet.
Yes.
It's the closest to the edge you can get without going over. And it's just a fabulously awesome name. And the producers were kind of wondering. They were thinking of changing it. In fact, the sequel to Cats and Dogs, where the villainess is named Kitty Galore, that was actually the alternate name that Eon was thinking about for Pussy Galore, but then they decided just to go with it. And boy, am I glad they did. Because Kitty Galore, yeah, for a kid's movie, fine. But for James Bond, no, it's got to be Pussy Galore.
Absolutely. Definitely a quality name, quality flick, and the top spot in our naughty Bond girl names.
Yes, you just can't get any better than Pussy Galore. But I also do want to give a shout out to the one and only naughty Bond boy name out there. It wasn't in the official Eon series. It was in Never Say Never Again. And that would be Nigel Small Fawcett, played by Rowan Atkinson.
Yeah, I remember watching that movie and I'm like, is that Mr. Bean? What's Mr. Bean doing in this movie?
It was his first ever film role.
Yeah, that was fantastic as well. And it's funny how they give the girls dirty names that seem to pump them up, and then the guy gets a Small Fawcett. I mean, come on, that's just harsh. That's mean.
It really is. But I suppose you'd be kind of surprised if you had say Mr. Bean playing Rockwood Johnson or something like that.
Could be Nigel Longbottom. Isn't that from a kid's cartoon or something?
Yeah, but so there you have it. We're starting things off with getting the dirty jokes out of the way. Well, not all of them, but most of them.
Good luck with that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so those are our naughty Bond girl names. If you have any that you think deserve to be on this list that we missed or didn't discuss, please feel free to drop us a line. We've got many ways for you to contact us. Obviously, you can comment on this post on our website at hermajestiespod.com. We're also available on Twitter. You follow us at hermajestiespod, or give us a like over on facebook.com/hermajestiespod. You can also email me directly, Eric at hermajestiespod.com. And Ziggy are accessible as well.
Yep, you can email me at ziggy@cinemaontherocks.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter at cinemaotr. And you can also visit my website, cinemaontherocks.com, where you can find reviews of just about every Bond movie out there and many, many others, and some web series and short films as well. So we're out there, folks. You can find us.
Absolutely, yes. Definitely find us. Let us know what you think of the episode. Let us know what you think of our lists. Let us know if we missed your favorite, especially when we're only doing 7 on the list. Obviously, we're going to miss somebody's favorite, so let us know, and maybe we'll give you a shout-out on the next show, and we'll come back and recap, be like, hey, by the way, such and such liked this one better, and let me tell you why they're wrong. No, I won't do that. I promise.
No, basically, all you have to do is tell Eric that Xenia Onatop is the best at everything, and he'll be fine.
Yeah, pretty much. That works for me.
But for now, that will do it for our Naughty Bond Girl names list. So now with the names out of the way, that was something which, of course, again, lets us get the dirty jokes out of our system, mostly. But it also, that's something that no one other than the writers and, of course, the implicit permission of the producer and the director have control over. So it has nothing to do with how the character is performed or even who the character is. It's just a matter of what the character's name is. Now, from here on in, we're going to be talking about the Bond girls themselves, which brings up an interesting point, which I think we'll be discussing throughout these lists, and that is, what does it mean to be a Bond girl? Now, we did make some arbitrary selections as far as what some criteria were, with one possible outlier there, which one of us may or may not have elected to choose. The criteria for being a Bond girl is you cannot have appeared in the series more than twice, played by any actor, and so that would leave out people like M, for example, which brings up a point right away. Sam Mendes, when he was talking about Skyfall, said that if you really think about it, the real Bond girl in Skyfall is M. And while that would be correct if you're assuming that the definition of Bond girl either is the female character who's the most important or the one who matters the most to James Bond is a Bond girl, I think that would be accurate. But I think that over time, we've gone well beyond that description. And I don't think that matters anymore, because I don't think it necessarily follows that the most important female character has to be, quote-unquote, a Bond girl, and in fact, in some instances, shouldn't be. What do you think?
It's an interesting point. I don't think of M as a Bond girl, not in any of the films, even in Skyfall. Obviously, she's one of the most important characters of the film, but she's more like his mother than anything else. And I think an important part of the Bond girl is the fact that they interact on more or less equal footing, where whether or not they actually hook up is not necessarily important, but the fact that they could is kind of necessary for me to really consider it to be a Bond girl. And everybody's going to have their own definitions. And if we just went with any female character at all, then M would definitely make the list. But as far as my definition personally of a Bond girl, I couldn't include M.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that. And just on the same token, even though she technically fits the criteria as having been only in one Bond movie, I couldn't include someone like Rosa Klebb from Russia with Love. No, that doesn't even make any sense whatsoever. So I think that I agree with Eric. There has to be at least the possibility that something could go on. I don't think there necessarily even has to be a Bond girl who is one of the major characters. Sometimes in some films, I think the Bond girl is someone who only has a few minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
And not just and that often happens with being a secondary Bond girl. And those are fair game. Basically, you don't have to have had much screen time to have counted for these lists. You can either have been in the whole movie or you could have been in 2 scenes or 1 scene. Yep. But I think that it's important, I agree with Eric, that there has to have at least been a possibility of a spark, whether it existed or not, whether it was consummated or not. So there are some others, like, for example, Rosa Klebb, who I wouldn't count on any list.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, when we talk about villains and bad guys and henchmen and stuff like that, yeah, Kleb will make that list. But Bond girls, no, can't do it. Cannot do it.
Yeah. And then from here on in, Eric and I were basically free to pick our own criteria for rating. Now, what we did not want to turn this into was the Cheesecake Factory, where this is just, oh yeah, she's hot. We like to think we're above that. I mean, we made tons of dirty jokes just a few moments ago, and I'm sure we're going to continue to make a few here. And yeah, we're human beings. It's gonna factor in somewhere. But I really tried to look first at the character, and then also at the performance.
Yes.
And then merge those two things together. And yeah, maybe there's some tiebreakers going on in there. I think that's perfectly fair. Just like, let's face it, I know a lot of people pick Daniel Craig as their favorite James Bond, not because of his acting abilities, but rather because of his shirtless scene in Casino Royale. And you know what? That's fair. I'm totally for that. And, if I were of a persuasion where I would be able to rate those things in a way that made sense, I'd be happy to do so. But I'm not. I can appreciate those things, but I can't. I'm not really a good judge. So, But basically, what we're trying to say, this is not the Miss America pageant. The talent competition actually matters here.
Right. I actually organized my list. Like I said, I got high-tech scientific with it because I was having trouble organizing my list. I pretty much had picked my people, but then to organize my list, I gave them ratings based on several different criteria. Hotness was one of those criteria, but it was only one of those criteria, and it was not the most heavily weighted. I also had a category for bondinosity. I had a category for just a single point could be gained whether or not I felt that Bond loved the character. Also, I rated them whether or not they were critical to the story of the movie. If they were throwaway characters, they got less points than if they were somebody integral to the plot of the movie. I also scored them based on the writing of the character. How strong was the character itself based on the writing? And then a separate score for how well they acted it. What did they do with the writing they were given? You can get a bad score in writing, but a good score in acting because you can do something, brilliant with garbage. But you can also take something very well written and turn it into crap. So there are some that got great scores in writing and horrible scores in acting. So, like I said, hotness was definitely a factor, but it was not the factor when determining my list. So a lot of other thought went into it. I actually put quite a lot of thought into this. Actually, more thought than I thought I was going to put into it.
You think?
I think, maybe.
I put a lot of thought into it as well, but I did not go with numeric logarithms or algorithms or, rhythm's going to get you, any type of that. I gave it a lot of thought and then I winged it. So.
Well, like I said, the final edit, even with all of the scores that I gave them and the rankings that I gave them, I did still end up tweaking the list. Like, oh, they put that person at number 10. No, they're number 5 at least. And let me flip this around.
And what I think is also going to be interesting, because as mentioned earlier, there are way more women who qualify as Bond girls than we have slots on either the bottom or the best lists. So I think it's also going to be telling who neither of us chooses to mention, or who one of us chooses to mention and another doesn't. So we've got lots of open space here.
Absolutely. So we want to start with the bottom of the barrel, get those out of the way.
Yep, we're going with our bottom 007 Bond girls. Would you like to start, sir?
Certainly. My number 7. So this is the best of the worst Bond girls. Not the worst of the worst, but the best of the worst. Which isn't saying much, but my choice for number 7 was Mary Goodnight from The Man with the Golden Gun. For me, she was good to look at. She definitely a pretty girl, nice body. She spent a good portion of the movie wandering around in nothing but a bikini, so I'm not complaining about her being there, but the character was just so dumb. I just couldn't. It took me out of the movie, and that's a movie that it's not in the top of my list for Bond movies. It's not near the bottom either, and this is one of those aspects I think they could have gotten better, was this character. So that's why she made my list at number 007 for the worst Bond girls.
All I'm going to say right now is I question your judgment, sir.
I knew this is the part where we're going to get weird, because I know there's probably going to be people on my worst list that are on your best list and vice versa. So this could get very interesting. Who did you have on your number 7 worst Bond girl list?
Before I get to that, I also want to note that it's possible that when people see my entire bottom 007 Bond girls list, they might want to read into it. I'm just going to tell you right now, don't. There's something that certain people might be able to, and it's not there. There are such things as coincidences, so I'll leave it at that.
Uh-oh.
But for my number 7, let's see how long I can keep a straight face. Someone whose name people might not remember right away because you only hear it once or twice, and she's not someone you think of for her name so much as for her really awful hairstyle and her really, really loud accent and the fact that she loves chickens. She really loves chickens. That would be Ruby Bartlett, played by Angela Scular in On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
You love chickens. Don't take us down.
Chickens.
You really want to take us down the chicken rabbit hole in this episode? Come on now. Wow. Yeah. I can't fault you for putting her on the worst list, other than the fact that for me, she just wasn't memorable enough to make even the bottom list. I mean, there were a ton of throwaway girls throughout the entirety of the series that could have, effectively been bottom listers for me because they didn't play any real part. I went with more ones that did play a big part, and unfortunately so is kind of where
Well, she was going to destroy the world if things had been allowed to go their way.
I'm not faulting your choice at all. I didn't think of it right away because I didn't think of that whole group. I kind of thought of that whole group of girls there as kind of one in my mind. I didn't pick them, but that's kind of how it melded in my mind. So that's the only reason they didn't end up on my list. But
she was just definitely so badly written, and yes. I'm sure the actress is a very nice person and everything, but just the loud accent to go with it. And I'll give her credit. She played the part exactly as written, but it only made it worse. And
but she loves
chickens.
You love chickens. You want to marry the chickens. Oh,
it was coming to that. So that's why she is number 007 on my bottom Bond girls list.
Okay. Well, no, that perfectly legitimate. What about jumping up to number 6? That's 6. Right?
Number 6 is someone who, when a lot of people are asked, just off the top of their heads, bam, immediately comes to their mind as the worst of the Bond girls. I don't happen to agree with this. However, she is the Bond girl who made Roger Moore decide to retire. That would be Stacey Sutton, played by Tanya Roberts in A View to a Kill. She's just a flake. And she's got no chemistry whatsoever with either Bond as a character or the actress with Roger Moore as an actor. There's just nothing there. This is just like, okay, Grandpa, get in there and get to it. Hey, lots of people would kill to be in your position, so just go. And it's just not there. And I've got respect for Tanya Roberts. She was, by the way, for those who don't know, the last of Charlie's Angels on the original television series. And she very much appreciated everything that she got in her career. And she's, like I said, does well in other things, but in this case, it just didn't work. And I'm going to blame the writing first, but then also just the total lack of chemistry between her and Roger Moore and the bad writing between Stacey and 007. This was just a match that was totally not made in heaven. So my number 006, worst Bond girl, Stacey Sutton from A View to a Kill.
Wow. It's shocking to me that you picked that. I'm just going to glaze over that completely. We'll get to that later. For right now, what I'm going to bring up is my number 6 pick, which was Tanya Roberts' portrayal of Stacey Sutton in A View to a Kill. I love it when we have one that matches up. It's fantastic. Folks, we do not discuss our list before the show. We both do our list completely independently, and then we are finding out each other's picks for the very first time when we sit down to record. So whenever we have one that's exactly the same spot on the same list, it's always a treat.
Especially when it's in the middle of the list. Like on our last one, the Naughty Bond Girl names, if it wasn't Pussy Galore, one of us was on drugs.
Exactly.
So...
But yeah, I agree with you.
This
Tanya
is awesome.
Roberts had very little chemistry with Roger Moore. Stacey Sutton had very little chemistry with Bond, and it just wasn't a great character. That whole movie, unfortunately, I do think of it's weird. It's one of those movies that I recognize it as being not a great movie. I still like it. I still watch it, but I recognize all the flaws in it. And I will say, actually, 2 people from that movie made just this 007 list. So
I am shocked that happened.
That's how bad the chemistry was in this one. And I think, like you said, Roger Moore was. I don't think he was in it anymore. He wasn't feeling it anymore, and I think that had an effect on how the girls were portrayed as well. But yeah, so my number 6 is exactly the same as yours, Stacey Sutton.
So who do you have for your number 5, sir?
My number 5 is a twofer. I couldn't pick just one of the two to be the worst because they were both equally dumb and completely unnecessary to the film.
I bet I know who this is.
Fun to look at, a fun little scene, but ultimately just completely worthless in the grand scheme of things, and that is Bambi and Thumper from Diamonds Are Forever. I grouped them together because they were, both there.
They are a group set.
Yeah,
you can't put them apart.
It's like salt and pepper. You can't take them apart, but yeah, they started out with such promise. I'm like, here are these 2 really gymnastic, real kick-ass girls who are going to come and put Bond through his paces. And then he's able to hold both of them underwater with one hand each after they nearly kick his ass. I mean, come on. Really? It went from being cool to being ridiculous so quickly that I had to include them on this list.
That was one that was teetering on the edge for me. In fact, I just rewatched Diamonds Are Forever the other night, and this was one of the aspects I was considering while I was watching it. And if there was a number 8 spot on this list, they would have made it. But they didn't quite make it for me. But I can totally understand where you're coming from for all the same reasons. They would have been my number 8 if I had one.
Sounds good. So who then did you have at number 5?
Well, she only comes more than once a year, apparently. That would be Dr. Christmas Jones, the world's most unbelievable nuclear physicist, played by Denise Richards in The World Is Not Enough. Just, you put a character description of her with just one word. Really? Written in bold with question and exclamation marks after it.
Really?
And she did the thing that most women who get cast in a Bond girl role in the modern age do, say, it's a really great opportunity, which it is, to play a really serious role. Are you kidding? In some movies, yes, not this time around. It's not the fact that we have an attractive woman who is a nuclear physicist. I totally buy this. I mean, there are lots of attractive women in positions like nuclear physics, astrophysics, anything you can think of. The most brilliant Unix admin I've ever met is a woman. Yeah. Just like there are many attractive men in these positions, and many ugly men, and many ugly women. It takes all kinds of attractive and ugly people to make the world go round. That's not the problem. The problem is I don't buy the way Denise Richards plays somebody as a nuclear physicist.
I completely agree with you there. In fact, she's, we'll get back to Miss Jones here. Or, I'm sorry, Dr. Jones. And not the good Dr. Jones, not Indiana.
Not Indiana Jones. This is like Mississippi Jones or something like that.
This is the bad Dr. Jones. We'll definitely, we'll be discussing her again in the very near future. So I definitely cannot fault you for putting her on the list. Yes, Denise Richards is wonderful to look at, but I've never thought she was a strong actress, really, in anything. Anything I've seen her in. Even my favorite movie featuring Denise Richards, Wild Things, she's still not a good actress in it. She's just, again, nice to look at, and you get to see quite a lot. That whole thing was just bad casting, bad everything, and I mean, yeah.
She was better in World Is Not Enough than she was in Valentine, but that's not saying much. I mean, just a vapid nuclear physicist. I don't think so. Sorry. So that's why Christmas Jones makes my number 5 on the bottom 007 Bond girls list.
All right. You want to move on to numero 4?
Number 4. Now, I read Roger Moore's memoir, Bond on Bond, and he is the consummate gentleman. I mean, he really goes out of his way not to say a bad thing about anybody. And when he does feel the need to talk about an incident that happened with somebody, he makes sure not to mention the name. Now, sometimes you can get pretty clever and figure out who it probably was, but he's an incredible gentleman when he talks about people, with one exception. And that would be Grace Jones as Mayday in A View to a Kill. Holy lack of chemistry, Batman.
I have never seen... they have a term for it. Hate screwing. And that's what it appeared. It wasn't supposed to be. In that scene, it was supposed to be her giving herself over to his Bondish charms, I guess, but it was just, it wasn't good.
They actively hated each other. They avoided each other's presence as often as possible and if they were in the same scene, acted in different takes as often as possible. Roger Moore basically said that the toughest bit of acting you'll ever see him do was having to pretend to welcome Grace Jones into his bed.
I am not shocked at all that you have this on your list. In fact, it's my number 4 as well. That's 2, both from A View to a Kill, both in the exact same spots. That is amazing. That is unheard of. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Mayday, while the character itself was interesting, I didn't like the fact that they had her fall for Bond's charms. I thought she should have been a stronger character than that. If somebody was going to fall for Bond out of Zoran's little group, it should have been Jenny Flex. Another contender for good name, but wasn't used enough. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. She was such a strong character, and for her to just suddenly give herself over like that, I'm like, yes, we get it. Bond's supposed to be the ultimate seductor, but no. It didn't work for me. And then add to it the fact that you could tell these two people did not want to have anything to do with each other. It was awkward. It was painful to watch. Hey, normally I'm all for the sex scenes in movies. I'm like, hey, bring it on. Bring on the gratuitous nudity. And I don't, take me out of the moment for just a second. I'll just watch this. But I'll look away. I'll check my phone for messages when that part of the movie comes on.
Yeah, it was just painful. I mean, badass hench person, fine. But as soon as she crossed the line into Bond girl, just disaster. And even enough to make Roger Moore say, yeah, look, this was not good.
Yeah, it was very bad, and like I said, it is unfortunate because the character itself had such promise. Had they skipped that part and just had her be the badass henchwoman who ends up, giving herself up to prevent her boss from doing something really evil at the end, that redemption would have made her a much stronger character had she not been just ugh.
Yeah.
So both of our number 4s, Mayday from A View to a Kill.
So who do you have at number 3?
My number 3, we're getting into the really bad ones here, the ones that really just take you completely out of the Bond universe and make you think, ugh, why? Why is this here?
Things that make you go, bleh.
Things that make you go, bleh. And so my number 3 is BB Doll, played by Lynn Holly Johnson in For Your Eyes Only.
Really?
I thought this character was so unnecessary. Just this little teenage girl throwing herself at the aging Bond, and of course, thankfully, the bright side was that he turned her down. It would have been just gross if he'd have accepted.
So she was, as guys all over the world put it, legal at the time. She was an adult. She just looked younger than she was.
Yeah, she was 22 or something like that during filming.
Yeah.
I mean, she was perfectly legal and not a problem. And even what Roger Moore would have been 54, 53 when that was filmed. So only a 30-year difference. But yeah, it was just, for me, it was too much, especially because, as you said, the character was intended. I don't know if they actually pointed out the age of the character at any point, but you were intended to believe that she was a teenager. Whether she was 18 or 19 is up for debate, but definitely a teenager. And so it was just like I said, I'm glad Bond turned her down, because that would have been a completely different level of creepy had he not. But it was just annoying. I did not like it at all.
All right. I will tell you that she is not on my bottom list. And I'll even give it away. She's not on my top list either. She's one of the ones I completely left off.
Oh, okay. Well, who did you put on number 3? Oh, no, go ahead.
And the reason that I'm not so creeped out by it is precisely because he turned her down. And at that point, the character is a bit of fun in the film, showing that, no, Bond will not just go to any open vagina he sees. He actually has a line that he checks IDs cross.
At the door. He
and
does check
I thought
the IDs
that
at
just
the door.
the value of showing that, and it was done in an amusing way. And I have to admit, I giggle at the line about the ice cream. It's just, I find it funny. And I thought Lynn Holly Johnson performed the role well. So I thought it was done with just enough fun without getting farcical. And the fact that he turned her down, and therefore this was being used not to show him as the ultimate seducer of everybody, but as someone who actually has a boundary, I was okay with her. So she went into my squarely neutral territory.
All right. Fair enough. As long as you don't have her on the top list, I won't get too far into you. I'm kidding. So who then did you have at number 3 on your worst Bond girls list?
My number 3 on the worst Bond girls list, she's one of those characters who just defines the word vapid. And you just can't believe that she was ever any kind of government field agent, even though that's exactly what she is supposed to be. And that would be Rosie Carver, played by Gloria Hendry in Live and Let Die. She's just such a flake. Even Bond has to point out how stupid she is. And I can't possibly believe that she was ever a field agent, much less one who's been there long enough to have someone else killed next to her. And of course, have her still stay on. I mean, she's frightened by the littlest thing. Her field skills are beyond questionable. You could take a random high school student and they'd probably do better. Gloria Hendry does what she can with what's written for her, but what's written for her is, to put it mildly, crap.
Yeah.
This character is actually, to me, the single worst thing about Live and Let Die, and one of only 2 things about that movie I don't like. The other one, of course, is Kananga being blown up like a balloon. But it's just, she is so vapid, so stupid, just drives me up a wall. That's why my number 3 worst Bond girl is Rosie Carver from Live and Let Die.
I will say she did not make either of my lists, but she was in the running for worst. If we'd have done a top 10, she probably would have made it. But she just wasn't, to me, memorable enough to make the top list. But I do agree with everything you said about her. She's not... the character didn't seem like she could be the character she was supposed to be, and that's never a good thing. It's kind of like the Christmas Jones situation. You never think that character, regardless of who's playing her, it doesn't matter who's playing her. I mean, it doesn't help that Denise Richards is playing her when you know that she's not. She was married to Charlie Sheen, for crying out loud. You know she ain't too bright.
On the other hand, she also left him and got out with the kids. I'm going to say that as a human being, she's probably perfectly okay.
Yes, very possible. I don't know her. I don't know her life.
I mean, I don't make value judgments against any of the people we're talking about in terms of their lives outside of playing the exact role we're speaking of at the time. So that's just my caveat for all of this.
Fair enough. But that does bring us back to Dr. Christmas Jones, who is my number 2 worst Bond girl. For all the reasons we've already discussed. I mean, she is unbelievable as the part that she's supposed to be, and it's a combination of the acting being horrible, but the writing isn't any better. They didn't write a convincing nuclear scientist. The only upside to her being in the film at all is the joke. That is literally, that comes down to the only redeeming feature of having her in this movie is the fact that we get I thought Christmas only came once a year. That's it. It really is. And an entire movie, she plays a major critical role in the movie, and it's awful the whole time. So that's why she made it all the way to number 2 on my list.
And considering the number of times in other movies where we have seen Bond disarm a nuclear device, the character wasn't even necessary.
do you know how to disarm a nuclear bomb? He should have been like, yeah, bye.
Yeah, I've done it in Octopussy. I've worked with nuclear warheads in The Spy Who Loved Me. I've also worked with nuclear warheads in Thunderball. Shall I go on?
Yeah, it would have been great to have been turned to her and been like, yeah, I think I've actually disarmed more than you have. So, bye-bye. Go away.
Except the ones I disarmed were about to go off.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I didn't know how to do it in Goldfinger, but I learned quickly.
I figured it out. Yeah, the character was completely useless. Acting was horrible. Writing was horrible. If it weren't for the throwaway joke at the end, it would be a completely wasted performance. So that's my number 2.
Now, my number 2 is also a complete waste of space. Angers me to no end whenever I think about this character. In fact, I'm going to guess that my number 2 might be your number 1. I'm just going to call this a guess.
Oh.
I might be wrong. I don't know. Like you said, we don't consult each other first. But my number 2 is Jinx, played by Halle Berry in Die Another Day. I cannot stand her.
I completely agree. And you are correct, sir. That is my number 1. Jinx, played by Halle Berry, who, and unlike you, I actually like Halle Berry as an actress. I think she's very beautiful. I think she has the capability of being a good actress. I've seen her in many things in which she actually did act very well. This was not one of them. This was just bad. And like you said, the character was unnecessary. It was in the way. And then they tried to tie her back in to Dr. No with the bikini scene. I was like, no, stop.
That was horrible.
Just stop.
That was blasphemy. And the character is horrendously written. It's like, okay, what if we could write someone who wasn't just a female analog to Bond, but a female analog to a parody version of Bond, who is completely obnoxious, who's going to... she actually filmed her sex scene with Pierce Brosnan with such massive orgasmic noises that they had to cut it down to keep from getting rated higher. and she takes the bad writing and magnifies it. And I don't even consider what I get from Halle Berry in this movie to be acting. Like I mentioned when we were discussing the movie itself in a previous episode, it's more like just entitlement. She's just like, I'm bursting out of the water. I'm Halle Berry. That's all you need to know. I don't have to act. Look, I got my attitude. That's all I am. And my character sucks. I mean, I hate Jinx. I hate her.
I'm actually, honestly, that's the reason I thought out of this entire list of 7, I thought we would only have one match, and I thought it was going to be number 1. I honestly thought you were going to have Jinx at number 1, because again, I know how you feel about her, and like I said, I don't feel that strongly about Halle Berry personally. I actually like her in most things, but not in this. I did not think she was good.
I don't hate her in most things the way I absolutely despise this role. And like I said, I'm sure she's a fine human being. I can't say I've ever particularly liked her in anything, but she actively angers me in this movie.
Yeah, like you said, it's a complete throwaway character. And what really disturbs me the most is I went through a lot of, when doing research for this, I went through a lot of other people's lists of best and worst Bond girls to see what other people had to say, to see if anything, resonated with me. Like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, or oh yeah, oh no, they're wrong there. And it shocked me how many best of lists Jinx turned up on. I was
Isn't that awful?
What? I mean, she even got, one of them was a top 10 list, I think by, maybe it was Entertainment Weekly, maybe it was somebody else, I don't know, and she was number 2 as best Bond girl. I'm like, what are you people smoking? She's definitely my number 1 worst Bond girl. They made her far too important for that role, for that acting. I mean, it didn't help that the movie was ridiculous, one of the worst of the franchise, and then her acting did not help that in any way, shape, or form. The writing did not help that in any way, shape, or form. And the attempts they made to make her look like some of the previous Bond girls that actually did have some gravitas to them, it was pathetic and awful, and I hated it. So that's why she made it my number 1. Now I'm very curious to know who beat out Jinx with that level of ferocity of hatred for Jinx, who could possibly have beat her for the number 1 spot of worst Bond girl? And I'm so scared that it's going to be like in my top 10 list or something.
I'm pretty sure she's not in your top 10 list.
All right.
And I even rewatched the movie that she's involved in last night to verify this.
Okay.
So I'm dedicated to my art, ladies and gentlemen, because I sat through this movie again. And the only character who inspires more vitriol in me than Jinx, the absolute definition of vapid, airheaded, are you that fucking stupid? Even worse than Rosie Carver in that aspect, even more grating and obnoxious than Jinx, is Mary Goodnight, played by Britt Eklund in The Man with the Golden Gun.
All right.
What a dipshit.
She was just so stupid. It was painful how stupid she was. That's why I was shocked when I said she was my number 7, and I thought she was going to end up on your top list somehow because you were like, I question your judgment. I'm like, what?
She's so stupid. The movie could have ended at an hour 20 minutes in if she hadn't jumped into the trunk of the car. She had the Solex. All she had to do was leave. That's all she had to do. And the entire time she gets in the way. She's vapid. She's stupid. She doesn't have a brain in her head. She makes Rosie Carver look like a rocket scientist. She's just dumb.
Oh.
Dumb. And I'm sorry. And this actually doesn't come into it for me because her brain just puts her so far down the list. I don't need anything else to make me dislike this character, but realistically, I'm looking at her and thinking, eat a sandwich. But, but no, she's just so stupid. And she is just the absolute epitome of dumb. And I know that there are a lot of guys for whom, hey, dumb blonde who wants nothing more than to get it on all the time, I'm all for this. You know what, guys? Have at it. That's not me. She's too stupid for me.
Quick.
Can't handle it.
That's like a one-night fantasy type of thing. That's not somebody you would want to have a relationship with because the stupidity would get so obnoxious and frustrating so quickly. Yeah, I wouldn't dream of. Yeah, that would not be my fantasy, you know. Yeah, I thought she was fairly good looking. She could definitely, stand a sandwich or two. That's not I've never really, I'm just a fan of women in general. I like them little, medium, big. I don't care. It's anywhere in between. I have wide, varied tastes, and I thought she was very pretty. But like you said, the character was dumb. And she doesn't beat out Jinx for me, but she definitely makes my list as well, even though it was the other end of the list.
Yeah, and I'm sure Britt Eklund is a fine person, though, to be honest, the only other movie that I can consciously remember seeing her in, I didn't like her in either. If anyone's interested, and if you like revenge gangster type movies, this is definitely a great, great movie overall. The original Get Carter from 1971 with Michael Caine, just gritty as hell mob revenge movie. I do recommend it, but one really creepy ass scene is Michael Caine having phone sex with Britt Eklund. It's just creepy.
I'm trying to imagine that. And all I can imagine is the size of a tangerine. Then I know that's a horrible accent. I don't do accents. But that's all I'm thinking of is Michael Caine.
Caine's full on Cockney in this movie.
I might have to check that out. I don't think I've seen that one. I think was that the one they remade?
Stallone remade it with Mickey Rourke, and Michael Caine also had a role in it. In the original, Caine is Carter. The remake is actually, surprisingly enough, because we're going from 1971 to 2000, the remake is heavily toned down from how gritty the one from 71 is. I mean, 71 it's pretty badass. So I do recommend seeing that movie if you're into mob revenge movies. But I bring that up just because it's the only other movie I ever saw Britt Eklund in that I consciously knew it was her. And yeah, like I said, she's probably a fine human being, but Mary Goodnight, oh my God, what a vapid fool. I can't stand her.
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't a great character, and definitely the writing did not help. And I don't think she didn't help out the writing with her acting at all. And so I can't disagree with you there. I think Jinx is worse, but that's all right. It's okay.
Well, really, this is like saying, what would you rather have? Tainted pork chops or tainted steak? They're both tainted. They're both going to make you puke and shit your guts out. So either way, it's not good.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not really picking the finest quality stuff here. You're picking the worst of the worst. So I think that does it for the bottom list, though. Is it time yet to get into the top list? So we can... Not top list. Top list. I should enunciate when I'm speaking of tops, huh?
Yeah, especially on the Bond Girl episode. No, we're not going there. We're not doing a topless Bond Girl episode. Though there have been a couple that's only usually been by accident. Only once or twice has it been on purpose outside of the opening credit sequences by Maurice Binder. But, So that does it for the bottom of the barrel. Now we're going to look upwards to the top 25 best Bond girls. Now, again, I think this is going to be really, really an interesting set of lists. I'll be surprised if we agree on more than a couple of them. I'm pretty sure we're going to agree on one spot in particular, but maybe not. I think we'll be close.
All right.
But I can think of some that I'm sure a lot of our audience are expecting on the list who are not there on mine. Because, again, part of the fun of this list is that it's shorter than the list of available candidates, so there are a lot of people we can leave off. So, so when you think about it, we've got 7 who are off already, and now we got 25 more to go. Who will we pick? What will we decide? What criteria did we use? And, of course, did Eric put Xenia on a top? I had to say it one more time.
The answer may surprise you. Probably not, but it may. So starting out from the bottom of the list. Now, keep in mind, this is not the bottom of the list. This is the top 25. And
yeah, so this is actually the bottom of really higher than the top half, because there are at least 60 women or more who could go on this list.
Yeah, exactly. And so for my 25, and this is the one that I honestly expect to get the second most amount of grief from you about. So we'll see if that ends up being true or not. This character was... First of all, the movie was not good. Not great. It wasn't one of the worst, but it was not great. And this character was almost too important to the part, but I did really enjoy the way the character was portrayed, and I really enjoyed the way that she interacted with Bond specifically. And so that's why she ended up making my list, even though it is all the way down at number 25. And that would be Paris Carver, played by Terry Hatcher in Tomorrow Never Dies. Not one that gets a lot of love on top lists, I'll be honest with you. But for me, I just felt that the character did have something going on there, and especially the fact that she was kind of a previous lover of Bond who was coming back, and I just liked the interaction between them, and something about it clicked with me, and it was one of the better aspects of that movie for me. So how much grief am I getting?
I suppose I can hold off from giving you too much grief on that one, because I do understand your reasoning. She doesn't get a whole lot of love on a whole lot of lists, you're right, especially because of the movie that she's in. And, of course, a lot of people unfairly, because I think that characters and actors should be judged individually on the work that you're looking at, not on their whole body of work. So, yeah, she was in the Skinamax era for a lot of pictures. She was in, Lois and Clark as Lois Lane, and somehow that makes it bad. I don't agree with any of that stuff. So looking at at Terry Hatcher specifically in this movie, her performance in this movie, looking at the character in this movie, I won't give you grief. So I'm not going to fault your reasoning for your number 25.
Wow, I'm shocked. Which means I'm getting twice as much grief when we get to the one that I really am going to get grief for, I'm sure. But before we get there, what did you have at did you have at number 25?
The character that I have at number 25 is one a lot of people forget, and also the only one who officially appeared twice. The very first Bond girl ever, Sylvia Trench, played by Eunice Gayson in Dr. No and From Russia with Love. And she's getting a big boost of pride of place because she is the first, and because she is the only one we saw twice.
Mm-hmm.
And I also she's got some spunk. I mean, she bribed her way into James Bond's apartment. after first meeting him at the card table. So she knew what she wanted, and she went out and got it, and she even hung on to him long enough to have a picnic lunch with him in front of From Russia with Love. It was originally thought that they might keep her on as the forever being strung along character in the series, but after the first 2 movies, they decided against that. Mm-hmm. But just, I gotta admire the style there, and also just for the veneration of the fact that she was the first, Sylvia Trench, played by Eunice Gayson.
All right. Well, I will not fault your decision-making process whatsoever, because my number 24 happens to be Sylvia Trench, played by Eunice Gayson. And for all the same reasons. Again, she definitely deserves a place on this list because she managed to make it into 2 films, and was even considered to be in more. And I'm kind of glad that they did. It would have been interesting, but at the same time, I think it would have gotten old fast. So I think the 2 appearances is probably perfect for this character. And like you said, she knows what she wants. She went out and got it. She didn't wait for Bond to seduce her. She just, hey. So I enjoy the character, and again, she does get extra points just for being the first. She's not really core to either of the storylines, but definitely still a good Bond girl, and one that, like you said, a lot of people forget about, and that's unfortunate.
Because, I mean, like as noted, first. So now for my number 24 spot, I expect to catch a little flack from you, probably because of how low I have this person.
Okay.
But that would be the utterly unforgettable, even though she had maybe 5 minutes of screen time, Plenty O'Toole, played by Lana Wood in Diamonds Are Forever. She took what could easily have been a throwaway character, in fact was thrown away over the balcony into a pool, but she made this character memorable. And this is the type of airheaded character that is the opposite on the spectrum from a Rosie Carver or a Mary Goodnight, because you can tell that a lot of this airheadedness is an act. Mm-hmm. I mean, just the way that Lana Wood is playing her, you can tell that, yeah, maybe she's not going to be getting, perfect scores on the SAT, and she's not going to have the genius IQ, but she's smarter than she acts. And you can see that she's doing what she's doing for a specific purpose. At this point, it's gold digging, but nonetheless, she knows what she's doing. She knows what she's after.
She has a purpose.
And she knows the part she has to play to get there, and she knows what her assets are, as does anybody with eyes.
Yes.
Oh my God.
One of my favorite, if I was making a list of just the most beautiful Bond girls, she would definitely be easily in the top 5.
I'm going to have to agree with you there, to be honest. And so for just a 5-minute throwaway part, she didn't even become Bond's lover. She meant to. He meant to. It just didn't happen. But just for making a role so memorable in so little time and standing out decades later, even for people who aren't huge Bondophiles, I had to at least give some love to Plenty O'Toole, played by Lana Wood.
Oh, no, I completely agree with you, and I'm not going to really fault your placement too much either, because we'll get to that in just a few moments. But so that was your 24?
Yes,
I'm getting ahead of myself here. So jumping up to number 23, and now this is one that I think I might get a little hell from you from putting so low on my list, but hey, this is the way the scores tallied out, okay? So my number 23 is Pushy Galore, played by Honor Blackman in Goldfinger.
Wow!
A fantastic character, well played, but even though I feel almost that the name was more memorable than anything else, so she didn't get a ton of points in that category, but she's very beautiful, and she definitely has the Bondinessosity factor going for her, and that's what got her on the list in the first place. And I did, when I was compiling the list, I saw how low she was, and I thought, oh, she's got to be moved up. But I couldn't bump anybody. I couldn't bring myself to bump anybody down to push her up. So she's on the list, of course, because she's a fantastic character, but all the way down at number 23 for me.
Well, at least now I know you're not going to give me shit for where I have her on my list. I understand. I do understand. We'll get more into that later, but I do understand. I don't have her in the same place you do, but I get it. Now, I expect to get some shit from you for my number 23.
This is a running theme here. All right, who do you have at number 23?
Honey Ryder, played by Ursula Andress in Dr. No. I have her there because, on the one hand, she's very iconic. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's the first Bond girl most people remember.
Yes.
Even though she's the third one he slept with. Because we first had Sylvia Trench, then we had Miss Tarot, and then we had Honey Ryder. But
they wanted to make sure you knew he gets around right from the get-go.
Yeah.
No surprises here. This guy does it a lot.
But, of course, we have the iconic scene of her emerging from the water, which is iconic when she does it, not when it's imitated by that other person.
Who we won't mention on this list, because her name does not even deserve to be mentioned amongst these greats that we're talking about now.
And, of course, Ursula Andress, I mean, let's face it, if you're going for the gorgeous woman factor, it's kind of hard to go wrong here. Mm-hmm. But the reason she's also so low is she is kind of dumb in terms of, I mean, her character exists to look good in a bikini and to be a damsel in distress. Now, of the characters who exist to look good in a bikini and be a damsel in distress, she does a fine job of it. But there's just not a whole lot more to her. You get a little bit when you hear her background of, oh yeah, you get the notion that, oh, she was assaulted before and she killed the person who did it to him. But, and, you know, cool, guy deserved it. But it's just, she's pretty one-dimensional in the movie, which is why I have to leave her at 23. All right. She's also the first unintentional quick nude shot in all of the James Bond series, by the way. Depending on how high definition your screen is when she's getting run through the decontamination shower just before she gets out. Just saying.
Freeze frame. Yeah, I will admit I have her much higher on my list. I'm not going to fault you for your reasonings, though, because, it's going to be some of the same reasonings I'm sure I'll use. I'm sure we're going to get to
as
people
always, we reserve the right to be hypocrites.
Absolutely. So, no, I don't fault you. I mean, I would have faulted you only if she wasn't on the list at all. But I won't fault your placement. So that's your number 23, Honey Ryder. Who do you have at number 22?
Number 22 is one that may surprise you that she's on my list at all, but she is another one of those where even though she has very minimal screen time, she just reached out and grabbed me for many reasons. And that would be Séverine, played by Bernice Marlowe in Skyfall. She is the woman we first meet at the Golden Dragon Casino.
Yes. And
wow, whoever did her makeup and costume, I completely salute you both. Just, that was an amazing look to start off with. But going beyond that, because as I said, it's the talent contest that counts the most here. Mm-hmm. I really liked this character who, as noted when we were discussing Skyfall itself, seems to have stepped right out of a James Clavell novel as somebody who's caught up in this awful system of Hong Kong, Macau, East Asia, in terms of the underworld of those areas where she's basically property. And she's property in a gilded cage, but she really wants to get out.
Right.
And within that cage, she has some power. And she shows it. She's got some real strength there. But there's also that vulnerability that, damn, I really, really want to get out. Mm-hmm. And the way Marlowe plays that, just you can see you have this really strong, this woman could claw you to death with those perfectly manicured fingernails if she wanted to. But then as they're talking at the bar, she cracks. And she's like, I want out. You're my only way out. And the worst part about this is I know that by even having talked to you, I'm dead. There is no way I'm coming out of this alive, no matter what. And yet, this is the only card she has to play, so she's going to play it. And just, there's something about that performance that really, really grabbed me. The, help me, James Bond, you're my only hope, but I'm not a doormat.
Right.
So that's what grabbed me, along with, yeah, oh God, she's gorgeous. But just that character and that performance really said something to me. So that's why Séverine is my number 22.
I will say that I'm not surprised she made your list. I'm almost a little surprised that she's as far down on your list as she was. And I think my placement of her on my list might surprise you.
I think it's going to, because I didn't think she'd be on your list at all. I thought that she'd be one you'd ignore.
No, see, that's the thing is, I remember when we talked about Skyfall, I kind of discounted her. I didn't have the same strong feelings about her that you had at the time. But I've watched it a couple of times since then, And I've taken what you said into consideration while watching it, and I really started to see the same things that you're talking about. And had I done this list 2 months ago, she might not have made the list. As it stands, won't spoil it, but she's much higher on the list.
Fair enough.
So that's your number 22. My number 22. And this is why I couldn't fault you for your placement very much, because I only had her 2 spots ahead. Plenty O'Toole, played by Lana Wood in Diamonds Are Forever. Like you said, a very, very small part, but so well done. Obviously, she gets the hotness points. Like I said, I didn't make that the only criteria, but it was a criteria, and she definitely wins that one. Very beautiful woman. But the character was also, even though such a small part, it was very integral to the story. I mean, it really, it turned things around in a way that was necessary. So even though she was only in there for a short time, she did play a fairly integral part in the plot, and she just did such a fantastic job with the part she was given. It made it so memorable, even though it was so short. So, like I said, I completely agree with all of your reasoning for putting her at 24. I just put her a little bit higher at number 22.
Fair enough. So, which one of your Bond girls is old enough to drink at number 21?
My number 21 is Jill Masterson, played by Shirley Eaton in Goldfinger. I love Goldfinger. I mean, that's one of my favoritist of the Bond movies. We've discussed this before. I'm a big fan of the gold ones, the GoldenEye and Goldfinger. Not so much the Man with the Golden Gun, but it's still in there. But the Bond girls in this one, both of the Mastersons, I did enjoy quite a bit, and so Jill made it to number 21.
I will tell you, this is one I was waiting to have come up on your list, because had this been a longer list, she would have been probably my number 26. She's not on my list at all. And the reason I had to leave her off is because her one really memorable contribution is as a corpse, not as a character. Because had she done really anything interesting before she wound up dead, that would have been enough to bring her onto this list because of how iconic she is being dead. And that's, of course, as the gold-painted corpse that's on every poster you ever see of the movie.
Yeah.
But it's just, there was just nothing to her before that. She helped Goldfinger cheat at cards, and she jumped into Bond's bed immediately. And just, it wasn't enough for me to put her on the list at all.
And so the iconicness of that scene of the gold paint, that was enough to propel her onto the list for me. Like, I agree, she didn't really have a big part other than becoming another character's motivation later on, which did play an integral part in the plot as well. And I did take that into consideration when putting her on my list. Like I said, that's why she's as low as she is. I mean, out of 25, she only made it to number 21. But, you can't think about that movie without imagining that gold body on the bed. And just that would almost be enough to put her on the list. But the fact that she also became the motivation for her sister later on is also integral to me. And that's why she made it onto my list. So that's my number 21. How about you?
My number 21 is kind of a box set with Severine, actually. My number 21 is Andrea Anders, played by Maud Adams in The Man with the Golden Gun, who basically is a very similar character to what Severine was, except she takes it one step further. She doesn't wait for her savior to come to her. She tries to go get him by mailing out that bullet, which leads to one of the many plot inconsistencies in that movie, which we won't get into right now. But just as a character, there was more to her than just being the kept woman who was trying to find a way out. Again, she brought a humanity to it, and she brought some intellect to it. Again, this was no dumb bunny here. This was somebody who knew what she had to get and went about getting it in what may not have been the most life-expanding ways possible. But so I just found her a very interesting character, and again, a prototype of what we ended up seeing with Severine later on. And the fact that she one-upped it by going after Bond herself as the originator of the whole scheme that's what put her just one spot above Severine for me. So Andrea Anders, played by Maud Adams in The Man with the Golden Gun. It's my 21.
All right. I will admit that that character is not on my list. Now, that actress did make the list, but not for that character. But I don't fault you for your reasoning whatsoever. Again, if this was a longer list, I'm sure she would have been, somewhere in the 25 to 30 range, 26 to 30 range had we done a top 30 or a top 35 instead of just the top 25. But she didn't quite make this particular list. But who did make my list at number 20 was the very young Jane Seymour as Solitaire in Live and Let Die. I'm of two minds of this because on the one hand, her performance seemed a little bit flat. It seemed a little bit kind of meh to me. But at the same time, I just really love the character. I just think it's a fun character, and I don't know that she could have done much more with the writing she was given than she did. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to her. And so that is my number 20.
I question your judgment, sir. And I think you know in which direction this is heading.
Well, all right. Well, who did you place then at number 20?
At number 20, and I backed and forth with this one a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually kind of surprised where she ended up, because this is the highest placement that I gave her on any of the iterations of where I could have put her on the list.
Okay.
At my number 20, I have Electra King, played by Sophie Marceau in The World Is Not Enough.
Ah, I'm a little bit surprised. I did not think that she would make your list, quite frankly. I wasn't sure, and I thought I was going to get a lot of hell for putting her on my list, and she's on my list, and she's a little bit higher. But I did not expect her to appear on your list, so I'm surprised, but only in a good way.
She's on my list because, on the one hand, I think her character is a bit too off the mark in terms of she's completely inconsistent. And I'm sure that this was the writer's way of trying to describe her as quote-unquote insane, but I don't think they did a great job of it. And yet, she's interesting enough, and the fact that she is a character who qualifies not only as a Bond girl, but as the Bond villain at the same time, and has both of those make sense, mm-hmm. That's why I had to put her on this list. So that's why she's at number 20.
All right. I don't, like I said, I don't fault your judgment at all, and we'll talk about Electra a little bit more later on, I believe. But that brings us up to the teens, doesn't it?
It does.
All the way up to number 19. So who did you have at number 19?
At number 19, this may or may not surprise you. Simply because of the movie that's involved. However, she was, as far as I was concerned, one of the only redeeming qualities about this otherwise horrible movie, and that is Miranda Frost, played by Rosamund Pike in Die Another Day.
I won't disagree with the fact that you think I'm going to be shocked by the fact that you have her on your list. I'm actually quite surprised. I thought it was a little too obvious right from the beginning that she was going to end up being on the bad guy side. Like, I just had a feeling. Like, it was just one of those things that everything was pointing to Frost, everything about the bad guy's ice and cold, and yeah, this is gonna happen, isn't it? I don't fault you for it, because of the characters in that movie, she was probably one of the most interesting. So, she definitely didn't make the movie any worse than it already was.
For me, on the one hand, it's obvious. If you have two women billed near the top, and one of them is not Judi Dench, one is good Bond girl, one is bad Bond girl. We know this. We know we're not going to let Halle Berry play bad Bond girl. Therefore, we're going to have this one as bad Bond girl. And like you said, Frost, it's pretty much foreshadowed. However, with that said, I still think I like the character in terms of she plays Bond's own game against him. And she does it in a way that's not obnoxious. If Jinx had been written actually with the same tone that Frost was written, Jinx could have been a much, much better character. Because Frost isn't obnoxious. Yeah, she goes to bed with Bond, but there's calculation there. She's playing him at his own game. And she's just not being, like I said, obnoxious is really the best word about it as far as what she's not. she's not at his level, but she's playing his game on his field, and for quite a while she wins. And she's also capable of holding her own in a fight, whether it's against Bond or against Jinx. And yeah, I can look at Rosamund Pike all day and never get tired of it. But I just thought that in a movie that was so full of things that were both uninteresting and actively made me angry, Miranda Frost was the one aspect of that movie I could look at and say, this is really interesting and I wish she was somewhere else because she deserves better than this. So my number 19 is Miranda Frost, played by Rosamund Pike.
All right. Well, like I said, I don't fault your reasoning. However, she definitely did not make my list. I don't believe she was even in consideration. Like, I could honestly say we could probably do a top 40, and she might still not make the list. But obviously, she wasn't on my worst either, so she's got that going for her, which is nice. But for me, my number 19. And this one, when I put this on the list, again, I could say this just about every choice, I think, until we get into the very, very top list. I wondered if I was going to catch hell for this, because for all the reasons, this character had a lot in common with a lot of the people that we put on the bottom list. However, I think it was just so much better done, and played a much more integral part in the movie and actually came off believable. And that would be Tiffany Case, played by Jill St. John in Diamonds Are Forever. Yes, she's kind of ditzy. Yeah, she's kind of money grubbing. And yeah, she starts off working for the bad guys. But I still love the character. I just do. It's just one of those things. One of my favorite parts of that movie is this character. So it may not make sense, but my number 19 is Tiffany Case. You may be ready now.
I'm not going to judge you badly for it. So you want to put her at 19? You go ahead and you put her at 19. That's fine.
All right. Well, I will.
So who did you put at 18?
Number 18 for me. Another girl from the Goldfinger movie. That would be the other Masterson sister, Tilly, played by Tanya Mallet. She obviously is higher on the list because I feel that she did play a more integral role in the movie, other than just being a corpse. I mean, not that she didn't do that, but not just being a corpse anyways. So that's why she ended up a little bit higher on my list, but I do feel that both of the Masterson girls deserve to be on the list. So that is my number 18, Tilly Masterson.
She didn't even fly onto my radar. I didn't even consider her. It's not that I dislike her. It's just that I just wasn't putting her anywhere in the top 25, and I knew it. Now, as far as my number 18, this one shocked me.
You shocked yourself.
It shocked me because of how low I have her.
Okay.
Because while she wasn't my first Bond girl crush, there was a definite Bond girl crush thing going on at one point with this character. But if I'm going to be honest with myself, and I have to be because, I try to have integrity on this show, I just can't justify putting her any higher. And that is Melina Havelock, played by Carol Bouquet in For Your Eyes Only. I love the concept of this character. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of the badass dark-haired Greek woman with a crossbow who's out to avenge her parents, even though she only drives a Citroen. I love the idea of her character. I love how they start with the character. But the reason I have to put her so low is she backs off immediately anytime she's asked to.
Yeah.
And because she backs off so quickly all the time, I just couldn't put her any higher, even though I want to. I want her to be the badass that she starts out seeming like she's going to be, but she just doesn't attain it.
Yeah.
And yeah, crush factor high, but I couldn't put her higher than 18.
I can understand the reasoning. I do have her on my list a little bit higher, but I will say for the exact same reasons that you just said, that's what kept her out of my top 10. Was the fact that the character just weakened as the movie went on, and it didn't need to. There was no need for that. But she's a little bit higher on my list, but not dramatically so. And we'll get to her fairly shortly. That moves us out of legal territory and down to number 17, does it not?
It does.
All right. So who did you have at number 17?
At number 17, I expect to catch some hell from some people for this. I have Major Anya Amasova, Agent Triple X.
Oh, man.
Played by Barbara Bach, Mrs. Ringo Starr, in The Spy Who Loved Me.
You will never guess in a million years who I have at number 17.
You wouldn't happen to have Major Amasova, would you?
I have Anya Amasova, Agent Triple X, who her code name almost made my naughty names list, but I decided since it wasn't her actual name, I wouldn't go with it. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I did not think we'd get any similarities in numbers until we got much higher in the list. So the fact that our number 17 matches up exactly is pretty cool.
I just, again, it's a similar story to Melina Havelock. She's supposed to be the Soviet KGB equivalent of 007. She's supposed to be their biggest badass agent out there. And it looks like she took a 2-day self-defense class. And that's about it. And by the time we get toward the end, she just sits there and plays captive nicely. And it's pretty obvious that Barbara Bach was hired specifically for how she filled a bathing suit, as opposed to how well she could play a really dangerous action character.
Right.
I mean, the most dangerous look that you get from her is when she sees Naomi, the boat and helicopter pilot, show up and start flirting with Bond, and she just gives her this look and says, "Bitch." It's just... So she started off with great promise, and it's really fun to see her go back and forth with Bond in the Egyptian ruins, but she just falls short of the mark after that. How about for you?
I agree. She was definitely a great character. I think the writing was mostly there. Again, the acting, she did get lower points on acting for me than for writing. But I couldn't leave her off the list. And in fact, she managed to get all the way up to number 17 for me. So, it's, again, the hotness factor, she definitely scored high there. Barbara Bach is a beautiful woman, but not the strongest actress in this particular film. And I don't blame the writing for that. There are some that you can easily blame the writing, and I don't necessarily on this one. But still, great movie, great character, and definitely good enough to get her onto the top list and even all the way up to number 17 for me.
So who's old enough to drive at number 16 for you?
Now, this is the one. This is the one that we discussed a little before the show because of the criteria we stipulated for the definition of a Bond girl. And so I'm going to have to justify this choice just a little bit. But I chose for my number 16, Eve, also called Eve Moneypenny in Skyfall. I justify this. Obviously, we said that anyone who appeared in more than 2 films was disqualified. And the character of Moneypenny obviously appeared in many of the films. However, Moneypenny was always a secretary. She was always she was M's secretary. That's what she was. She was never a field agent. She was never anything, that's what it was. And it was always just a flirtatious relationship with Bond and nothing further. The furthest we ever saw anything go was only in her imagination through a virtual reality simulator.
So are you now admitting that in Skyfall, yes, they did it?
I'm absolutely positive that they did. Absolutely 100%. It's the more you watch it.
Because you weren't admitting that when we discussed the show.
Yeah, it was a tough one. I didn't want to, and that's because I was still considering her. I didn't want to admit that because I was still considering her Moneypenny. And now I don't think of that character as the same Moneypenny that we've seen in the other movies. I think they just reused a name, but the character is so very different. I mean, like I said, she starts out as a field agent. She's taken out of the field after she shoots Bond, but she starts out as a field agent, and then you have the fact that, almost 100% certain that they did it, which takes her completely into a different realm, a different territory for me. And I thought the character was fantastic. I thought she played it brilliantly. I thought the actress was great. I thought it was very well written, and like I said, enough to not only go ahead and bend the rules and include her on this list, but bring her all the way up to number 16 for me.
For me, she's still, my personal view of what this list should be, she's still an automatic disqualification. They reinvented the character, but one, she's going to be in future films. She's going to automatically disqualify herself on that aspect alone in 2 more movies.
So when we redo this list 3 movies from now, I won't pick her.
But also, she's a reboot of the same character, but on the same token, James Bond is a reboot of the same character, Felix Leiter is a reboot of the same character, and so on and so on. I just can't do it. I can't put her in the Bond girl category. It's the same reason I can't put M in the Bond girl category. I mean, at least Bond didn't sleep with them. No matter how much really greasy fanfic is out there, it didn't happen. But for me, I can't. I understand why you want to do it, and I'm not going to rake you over the coals for it. But I can't put her on the list myself.
Fair enough. So who did you have at number 16 then?
At number 16, I have the character who I think of as, I don't want to put it this way because this isn't quite right, but it's what my brain wants to say, and that's top doormat. Because you have the Bond girl who, she's given a position in the film that, based on the way she acts, you almost can't believe that she's qualified to have, because she's just so passive and so placid throughout the movie that she is existing specifically as the damsel in distress and the damsel in this dress, both. However, she's absolutely iconic. In fact, she's one of the characters who is used to screen test James Bond movies. That would be Tatiana Romanova, played by Daniela Bianchi in From Russia with Love. I understand her importance as a character in the Bond universe. The Bond universe really isn't the same without her, because she's an establishing figure within it. Mm-hmm. And for what she's given, Daniela Bianchi does a fine job with the role. But the role is just so passive, especially compared to what job she's supposed to have during the day, which is she's in charge of handling the most important coding machine in the Soviet Union. And
that little thing?
Based on how she acts, I just can't picture that.
Right. No, I can understand that. I will admit that Tatiana made it a little bit higher on my list, but I won't fault you for your placement. Again, we're already into the good, the best of the best here. So really, from here on out, placement is extremely subjective. I mean, extremely subjective. So I can't fault you for your placement at number 16 for her. I do, like I said, have her a little bit higher, but not so dramatically that it's that big a deal, I suppose.
Fair enough.
So moving on to number 15, who do you have in that position?
In that position, I have Miss Cara Malovi, played by Mariam Dabo from The Living Daylights. And by your cackle, I'm going to guess that you do too. Exactly.
Oh my goodness. I cannot believe it.
We've never done this, folks. This is awesome.
Yeah, Cara Malovi from Living Daylights is my number 15 as well. So
we did not discuss this list. We did not share this list. We live a really long distance apart. This is just funny.
I chalk this up to showing just how objective we're trying to be. Yes, this is a subjective list. Obviously, it's our personal preferences. But we were both trying to be as objective as possible when making these lists. We both put more criteria than just whether or not you like them. Obviously, that was a factor. Just like I said, the hotness factor was a factor, but not the only factor. And I think that really shows when we have ones that match up so closely and even to the point of being exactly in the same position. So why did you choose Cara for your number 15 spot?
Because while she is the damsel in distress, she's also love-struck at first for the bad guy and then for James Bond, she's still also her own person at the very least. I mean, she is a talented cellist in an orchestra. She's got a Strat cello. They don't give those out to just anybody. So she is her own person, and she plays that person well. And she also doesn't play her in doormat fashion. Mariam Dabo plays Cara as a real person who's just caught up in all of this mess and trying to do the best she can with it. And she does try. Doesn't always make the best decision, but she tries. And she's real in a way that still fits in with the unreality of everything that's going on around her. So decently written, very well played. That's why I have her at my number 15.
Absolutely, and I completely agree. I thought she was a fun character. I thought she was exactly what was necessary for that part, and obviously very integral in the movie. It's not a throwaway part whatsoever. And again, Mariam Dabo did a fantastic job playing her, even to the point where we were questioning when we were talking about this movie whether or not she was actually a cellist. And it turns out that
she's not, by the way.
Yeah, no,
we
she
figured
wasn't.
that out.
She did take some, evidently she took some classes so that she would look convincing, and she did it very well. So I always appreciate when an actor or actress is willing to put in that little bit of extra work to make it look that much better. I mean, how many times have we seen actors or actresses who are supposed to be playing an instrument and it's so blatantly obvious that they're not? It's to the point where it's almost parody. I mean, you watch like Anchorman, you see Will Ferrell playing the jazz flute, and you can tell it's blatant, but it's a farce, and you would expect it to be that way. But then you've seen the realistic movies where this person is actually supposed to be playing this, and it doesn't look anything like it. And so the fact that she was able to put that extra work in and not make it look like that, I appreciated that. So that helped propel her up on the list as well.
All right. So who do you have at number 14?
My number 14 is kind of a twofer, because this one is the same character essentially in two different movies, and I liked both of them just about the same, so I couldn't really pick one performance of this character over the other. So my number 14 is the character Domino, played by both Claudia Auger and Kim Basinger in Thunderball and Never Say Never Again.
Interesting. I didn't think you would do anything with Never Say Never Again in just your normal fashion.
Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that if Thunderball had never been made, I don't know if Never Say Never Again was good enough for me to think of this character as good enough to make the list. But with Thunderball and Never Say Never Again, and I did think that in Never Say Never Again, I think, besides the game, Kim Basinger's performance was probably the next best thing in that movie. So I really enjoyed the character. It is an important character in the movie, in both of them. Obviously, same storyline in both. We've discussed that ad nauseum in the past, so we won't have to get into that. But it's a very important role, and I thought it was well played by both actresses. So it was enough to not only make my list, but get close to the top half. And it's still technically in the bottom half, but it's getting there.
I'll say that, when I was considering the character of Domino, I treated them as two separate characters. I understand why you're not, but I treated them differently because I thought they were sufficiently different in how they were played. Had we been doing a top 30... Kim Basinger's Domino probably would have made it onto the list for me, but she didn't. And the main reason she would have made it would have been the tango scene.
Absolutely.
But beyond that, the character was just kind of there for me, and the porno aerobics didn't quite count.
That was the best part. No.
And I honestly found Claudine Auger's Domino, at no real fault of her own, to be almost the doormat's doormat. She just did nothing for me. Right. I understand that the character is important to moving the story along, but the character didn't grab me in any way. So she's neither Domino is on my list. So you win the game of dominoes.
I'll slam it down on the table. So who then did you have at number 14?
At number 14, I had a character whom the producers later admitted they regretted not having carry on further. And that is Strawberry Fields, played by Gemma Arterton in Quantum of Solace. She was a fabulous character. Gets very little screen time, but she asserts herself in that screen time. I mean, yeah, she also falls right into Bond's bed the moment the chance arrives, but in a way that doesn't look like, oh yeah, fine. It makes sense. It's believable. And she's kind of in over her head, but not because she's dumb. She's in over her head because this is not her job description. But she adapts very well. And I think the moment that seals it for me for this character, and also for the actress's performance, is when she trips the guy at the party. Because she's like, okay, yeah, I didn't agree to this, but I'm all in. Down you go.
All right. And I can definitely see that. I will say that she did not make my list, but I can't fault you for the reasoning. And honestly, had she been even just a little bit bigger part in the movie, I might have considered her. I think I kind of skipped her over because the part was so small. And it didn't jump out as that memorable to me. I feel that like the Plenty O'Toole character was just as short a part, but much more memorable to me. So I understand. I disagree, but I understand.
I would have really liked to have seen what would have happened if the character would have been molded into perhaps becoming Bond's personal assistant. Because in the books, he actually had his own secretary. In fact, Mary Goodnight started out that way. And then you also had Layla Ponsonby. I'm pronouncing her name wrong. But that I could have seen Strawberry Fields jumping into that kind of role, which would have been, I think, very cool. And like I said, after they wrapped on Quantum of Solace and after the movie premiered, Barbara Broccoli said to Gemma Arterton, "I'm sorry we killed you."
Our bad. We'll bring the beers.
Yeah. And so, yeah, she stuck with me rather like she did with Barbara Broccoli.
Okay. Well, I can completely understand that, and maybe I just need to... Quantum of Solace, I will admit, is one of the newer ones that I haven't seen as much. I've definitely seen it a few times, but it's not one that I go back to very often. So maybe I need to watch it a couple more times and let that performance sink in. This could be a very...
Watch it, Dewey. Watch it.
This could be a very different list in like 6 months, depending on what I've watched.
But that's the thing with all of these lists. They're very subjective. And that's part of the fun of them.
Absolutely, yeah.
They're snapshots in time.
Exactly. So as of right now, she did not make the list, but let me watch it a few more times and we'll see where she falls. So that brings us into the to number 13, does it not?
It does.
All right.
And at Lucky 13, I have Magda, played by Christina Wayborn in Octopussy.
Wow. That's another one that I did not select on the list at all.
She just really, really sticks out for me. One, I think Christina Wayborn gives her a fabulous personality. I think she takes her performance above and beyond what the writing originally had there. And the writing on this part was already good, but she gives it something extra. She gives Magda a little bit more of a knowing characteristic. I wouldn't quite say naughtiness, even though that's part of it, but also a calculation. You can tell very much that this character deserves to be Octopussy's right hand, and no, not that way, get your mind out of the gutter. I just really like what she did with the role, and I like how the character plays Bond's game with him and beats him at it a few times, and just that really memorable scene of her, okay, I took the egg, I'm going to unwrap my sari, drop down off the porch, who's sorry now?
I can totally understand that, and now thinking back, that particular scene especially was brilliant. It was just fun to watch, and even though she thinks she's getting away with something that she's not really getting away with because it was obviously a plant, it still is a fun scene. So I'll give you that one. I did not think of her specifically. When I thought of that movie, there was only one girl that I could pick from it, obviously. So didn't quite make it on my list. For me, number 13 is from Quantum of Solace, but not Strawberry Fields. I actually went with Camille Montez, and I don't know if you'll agree or not, but for me, that character, it grew on me quite a bit. At first, I did not like that character, but over the last couple of times I've watched it, she grew on me quite a bit, which is why I think Strawberry Fields might grow on me more if I watch it a couple more times. Maybe that's what it takes, is just watching that movie a few more times, and all the characters will grow on me. But for me, Camille did a fantastic job of everything she was asked to do, and I thought it was a great character. What say you, sir?
I say that I agree with you that Camille Montez is a great character. She is not on my list, because she fits into that Twilight Zone we've started coming across starting since the 90s of, I don't count her as a Bond girl. She is a female character in a Bond movie. Okay. She is not a Bond girl to my eyes. There is never anything between them. It's not even thought of until, as with the other character I put into this same boat, except not as egregiously, the very last moment that you see her, they force a kiss. But I think in the case of this movie, that's what Bond needs to do to let her go, because he doesn't know how to deal with her in another context. Whereas if he kisses her, he can go away. If he doesn't, he's not quite sure how to handle this, because it's not quite how his persona works.
Right.
But I don't think that kiss makes her a Bond girl or makes that there was ever any of that kind of chemistry there. I think she just... And I think this is where the modern age is changing the definition of a Bond girl, because in the past, it would be really easy to say, what's a Bond girl? Well, let's see. Does she have breasts and a vagina and she's in a Bond movie? She's a Bond girl. I don't think that's true now. And I think Camille Montez is one of those characters who defines that new paradigm of being a strong female leading character whose designation is not M, who isn't a Bond girl necessarily. So that's why she's not on my list.
All right. I can understand that. I can't say I 100% disagree, but obviously I do enough that I did include her on my list, because I thought even though it was kind of forced interaction at the end there, it was enough of the interaction that I classified her, and I liked the character so much that I figured that classification was justification enough to get her on the list, and even as high as number 13 for me.
Fair enough. How about for your number 12, sir?
For my number 12, I chose one you've already mentioned. That would be Melina Havelock, played by Carol Bouquet in For Your Eyes Only. The only reason she didn't crack my top 10 was because of the reasons that you stated, the fact that she backed off so easily when pressed. Other than that, it was such a fantastic character, and I thought it was fantastically played as well for the most part. There were a few times when you just kind of were taken out of the moment by, it's like, is she really just kind of phoning it in there for a minute? But then she came back, and she's doing it. So I really enjoyed the character. I love that movie. I mean, again, that's one of the first... It is the first Bond movie I ever actually saw, even though I didn't really understand that I was watching a Bond movie at the time, but it was still the very first one that I saw, and it still holds a special place in my heart. And part of it is that teenage boy crush on the pretty girl, but that wasn't the major reasoning for putting her on this list. The major reasoning is that she is very integral to the story of the movie. She is very important, and she does do a good job with it, and I like the character.
Understandable, and can't fault you, and I have the crush factor too. Totally. I get it. So, very cool. Very cool. As for my number 12, I had somebody who I'm wondering if she made your list at all. I'll be surprised if she did, actually. And that would be the character of Fiona, played by Luciana Paluzzi in Thunderball.
You would be correct in your assumption that it did not make my list. didn't cross my radar, but changed my mind.
I have her there because... Not only do we have a very, very strong Spectre henchwoman, but we have a strong Spectre henchwoman who is not going to take any of James Bond's shit. She's just like, oh, what, you think that just because I slept with you, I'm just going to give it up? Is that what you think? And It's pretty much a slap in the face to scripts that have already come before where that's exactly what happened. She stands on her own. It's like, no, you didn't seduce me, Bond. I seduced you. And it's something that she doesn't say that, of course, but that's how it plays out. And she means it. She's actually she's kind of a badass. And she plays Bond's game. She beats him at it for a while. Of course, she ends up getting killed, but not from anything stupid that she does, really. And I really like this character. She just really stood out for me as someone like, all right, this is someone who's going to take it to him, and not just that way. So Fiona from Thunderball. All
right, fair enough. I cannot fault your reasoning. Again, she just didn't cross my radar when I was considering this list. I didn't think of her and dismiss her. I just didn't really think of her, which tells you something in and of itself. I mean, we're only picking 25, and again, I didn't really start my classifications until after I had picked my top 25. Actually, I picked about 35 total, and then I took the top 25 of that. But this was one that it didn't hit my list, and it was just kind of more of an oversight than a specific slight to the character. So I'll give you that one.
Excellent. So who do you have in that slot, sir?
My number 11 position is filled by another one that you have already mentioned, and actually I was shocked that she was on your list at all, and that would be Electra King, played by Sophie Marceau in The World Is Not Enough. I thought that the character was fantastic. I really did enjoy her performance of the character. I thought it was mostly believable. I mean, as believable as anybody's performance got in that particular movie, I should say. And so I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that particular character and that performance of it. So this, basically the same reasons you had her on your list, I've also got her on there, just slightly higher.
I will have to say she's no Molly Wormflash, and no, Molly did not make this list. As much as I really enjoy the character, she didn't make this list. However, I do have a number 11, and I am going to break your heart, Eric.
Oh no. Not that low. You can't do that.
I can, and I did. However, for all of the Bond girls who are below the top 10, for me, Xenia is on a top.
That's an awful lot of classification to make that joke. All the way down to number 11.
I worked for it.
Oh, man. You hurt me. You hurt me deeply. No, I was kind of surprised that she made it this high on your list. I expected to hear her name. I would have been extremely disappointed had she not made your list at all, but I fully expected her to maybe be in the 20s, because I know you're not as big a fan of the character as I am. But for me, so why did she make your list, and why didn't she make your top 10?
Well, I am a fan of the character. I'm just not quite as obsessive as you are, and that's perfectly fine. I think she's fun. As far as the evil henchwomen go, I mean, she's got the batshit crazy thing down, and she has a really good time with it. And it's not just the batshit crazy sexuality portion of it, where she orgasms at the thought of being derailed in a train.
He's going to derail us. Yes. Oh, it's fantastic.
But there's also the playful fun she's having during the opening race sequence in the bright red Miami Vice car. Mm-hmm. So, there's lots to love about Xenia Onatopp. And as far as evil hench people go, she's near the top of that list. But overall, there were just several others who I thought fit more of the Bondinessosity scale for Bond girls. But again, we're getting to the point where we're almost at the top 10, and we're looking at best of the best. All of these would be just wonderful selections for any list. So
yes.
It's not that there's anything wrong with her. It's just that there are more people I thought who had stuff right with them.
Okay. I'll let you have this one. I'll just go cry in the corner now.
So you go cry in the corner, and we'll move on to the top 10. So if Eric is done crying over my selection for number 11 on the list, what do you have to crack open your top 10 of the best Bond girls?
My number 10 might be a slight shock to you, simply because I think when you mentioned her, you thought I didn't have her on the list at all. And that is Séverine, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right or not, but it's got a lot of little marks over the letters, so I'm assuming there's some funny sounding to it. From Skyfall. Now, I remember when we talked about Skyfall originally, I wasn't a huge fan of this character. I kind of dismissed her a little bit. But having watched it a few more times since then, I've really started to appreciate her character quite a bit more, and the actress's performance of the character is phenomenal. I mean, there's no denying that. So it propelled her from probably wouldn't be on my list at all to bottom of the top 10 quite quickly, just in rewatching the movie a few times. So that is my number 10.
And like I said, I was surprised that she made your list at all after our discussion originally, but I can't fault you for putting her on it. I am surprised she made it this high up, but that really is an outstanding performance. Especially that moment when she cracks at the bar, where you just realize that she knows that no matter what happens from here on in, she's almost certainly dead. So it almost doesn't matter whether she dismisses him or not. So she's just going to go for it.
Right.
It's really well done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very well acted. I think it was good writing to begin with. And, when it comes right down to it, I think finally it was actually more than just a waste of good scotch. It was a waste of good scotch, for sure. I mean, 50-year-old McClellan, holy jeez, stuff's like $100,000 a bottle. But it was more than just the waste of scotch as well.
Yeah. It was also the waste of a good character.
Exactly.
But, of course, let's face it, any Bond girl who's introduced before a certain point has a very high percentage chance of dying. We just know that this is how it goes.
Yeah, you might as well throw them in a red shirt. You're pretty much guaranteed they're not making the end of the movie.
Yeah, red shirt, red negligee, whatever works.
So who was the first person on your top 10 list?
First person on my top 10, I was kind of surprised she was so low on your list. However, I completely understand. In fact, I was kind of worried that I was going to get lots of shit from you for having her as low as I have her, and I'm sure we're both going to get shit from the audience. And that would be the one, the only, Pussy Galore, played by Honor Blackman in Goldfinger.
It's a great character, it really is. And honestly, it was one of those ones that I was looking at it on my list and thinking, it's got to be higher than that. It's got to be. But then when I took everything into consideration, I just had more reasons to put the rest of the girls higher than her. So no, I don't fault you at all. So tell me, why did she make it so high on your list?
One, Honor Blackman acts past the name, which is really, really hard to do. Let's be honest. I mean, if you sign up for a character named Pussy Galore or like Rock Hard Johnson, I mean, it's going to be pretty damn hard just to get past what you're called. And Honor Blackman manages to do that and to do it very well.
Yeah.
And the character herself, she was the first really strong Bond girl in terms of strength for any length of time. And she was the blueprint of what a Bond girl could be, aside from a damsel in distress, because that's really all we had before her. And even though the reason that she stays lower than, the top 5 is that she's strong until she's not. And the moment she's not, just boom, that switch is flipped. It's not flipped as egregiously as it is in the book, or offensively as it is in the book, but it's so quick, it's so instant, and it's rather contrived. And the reason she makes it so high is because Honor Blackman does such a great job up to that point, and even afterward with the writing she's given. But the reason she doesn't get any higher is, like I said, she's really strong until she's not, and then the flip makes very little sense.
Yeah.
But she's so iconic, she had to be here somewhere, and she had to be pretty high up.
All right, I can concur with your sentiments. It's pretty much the same reasons I put her as low as I did, because the character itself, does make that random switch, and you're like, oh, geez, come on now. Yes, I get it. Bond's supposed to be the ultimate man's man, the ultimate good-looking man, the ultimate seductor, however you want to say it. But there have to be some limits.
Yeah.
And I think when you have a character like that, there should have been that limit in place. And when it was so easily and quickly crossed, that's what shot her down on my list. But sounds like a good number 10 for me. For you. For me, we want to jump up to number 9. And this is one I'm not sure. This is a tough one because I did read a little bit more into this character than just what we see in the movie. I know more happens with this character in the novels, and that kind of, in the back of my mind, factored into this. And so my number 9 is actually Kissy Suzuki from You Only Live Twice.
All right. Do go on, sir.
You're like, what? I wondered if this one would be a bit of a shock.
I'll be completely honest. Yeah, it is. Because you're right. In the novel, she is much, 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 much more important. But in the movie, she's just not quite useless, but real close as far as my reading of her.
Well, and that's the thing is I did take a little bit of what the character should have been into consideration. As far as I'm aware, she's the only, in the books, she's the only person we know of to carry Bond's child that I'm aware of. And I might be wrong there, but because I haven't read them all. But so that one, that kind of jumped out at me, and I was like, wait a minute, all right, so that's cool. But in the same token, you are right. In the movie, she doesn't really play as big a part. We get to see her marry Bond, but obviously it's not the real deal. But I don't know, something about her, she just stuck with me. Like, out of all the random throwaway characters that we've seen throughout all of the Bond series, this one just kind of grabbed me for some reason, and I'm not even sure why. to be quite honest. It's one of those really weird ones. You know, again, when I was ranking my list, there were so many reasons I could have taken her off, or so many reasons I could have pushed her further down, and yet she still kept floating up to the top in my mind, so I couldn't deny it. I had to put her on there. So there's my shocker in my top 10. Hopefully it's the only major shocker in my top 10.
I suppose that's fair. She's not on my list at all, anywhere, but fair.
So who do you have at number 9?
At number 9, I have someone whom you had a bit lower and were wondering if I was going to give you crap for having her on the list, and that is Miss Tiffany Case, played by Jill St. John in Diamonds Are Forever. She was another one I'd been backing and forthing with, and the other movie that I rewatched recently to prepare for the list was Diamonds Are Forever. Mm-hmm. And the more often I see that movie, the better I like this character. Because on the one hand, she does have a bit of the ditziness written into the character, and Jill St. John does such a fantastic job doing the performance of that. And she also brings an aspect to it which, whether it's the writing, whether it's Jill St. John, whether it's both, that shows you that by and large, just as it was with Plenty O'Toole, the ditz stuff with her is an act. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that she's a perfect badass, because she's not. You can tell that she really doesn't like conflict. She does not like shooting guns. She doesn't know how to shoot a gun. But when it comes to the dumb act, like when she's trying to pretend to flirt with Blofeld and make the tape switch and so on, she's just playing dumb. She's not really dumb. And I think that savviness shows through. And I think she's a very interesting match for Bond. I mean, not totally matched, but she can hold her ground with him, and in fact does take him to school a few times. So between a really strong performance from Jill St. John and some very, very interesting writing that walks a very fine line and comes out on the winning side, I have to pick as my number 9, Miss Tiffany Case from Diamonds Are Forever.
All right. Not too shabby. Like I said, I was actually... I was wondering if she would even make your list, but now that you've explained it, I can't imagine her not being there. So, see, that's how this works. We justify our choices, and everybody understands.
Exactly.
Sort of.
That's why we explain them and don't just say, here's a list, you're done.
Yeah, here's a list. You figure out why we said it. So moving on up to number 8. Who do you have at that spot?
This one, I will be surprised if she's on your list just on general principles. However, I absolutely, positively had to pick and had to stick her in the top 10 somewhere. Fatima Blush, played by Barbara Carrera in Never Say Never Again.
You are correct that she is not on my list.
I'm sorry, go on.
I said you are correct that she is not on my list.
She is one, I think she's the prototype for what Xenia Onatopp ended up being. She is the badass female hench person just completely gone to town with. And she just takes the part and she runs with it with extreme gusto. And the character herself is delightfully evil and delightfully bad. And yet she's not played quite past the level of farce. She's as over the top as you can get, with the possible exception of she does an orgasm when she kills somebody. But she's about as over the top as you can get without going too far. She throws a pet boa constrictor in somebody's car to kill him. I mean, and then, of course, you have the wonderful, wonderful scene where she makes James Bond write a note saying that she was the best lay he ever had. She's just so damn much fun. I had to include her on this list, and I had to put her in the top 10.
Okay. I understand your reasoning. It was hard for me to include anything from Never Say Never Again in this list, and even then it was a shared spot. So, but I can understand that, and definitely is a fun character. Definitely not in my top 10 or even in the top 25, as we know, but definitely a fun character.
So who do you have in the number 8 spot?
My number 8 spot is one that you already mentioned, and I was kind of shocked that she was as low on your list as she was. It is Honey Ryder from Dr. No, played by the beautiful Ursula Andress. again, she wasn't necessarily the first Bond girl, but she is the first Bond girl that most people think of when you say Bond girl. That's immediately what most people think of, is that iconic scene of her coming up out of the water in that bikini with the knife strapped to her thigh. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a great fun movie. It's a great fun character. Yes, she is a little dumb from time to time. Okay, I get that. And that's why she's not, in the top 5 or something. But I thought it was good enough to get her into the top 8. And that is where she sits at number 8.
All right. And now we're going to be cracking the top 007.
Dum, dum, dum.
So who makes number 007 on your list of best Bond girls?
For me, Miss 007 is Tatiana Romanova. From Russia with Love. From Russia with Love. Didn't have enough frums in there. I thought that was a fantastic character, and I think Daniela, is it Bianchi? Am I pronouncing that even close to right?
I think it's Bianchi.
Bianchi. I thought she did a fantastic job portraying her. It's another one of those iconic Bond girl roles. It really is. It's probably the next one people think of. If you say Bond girl, the first thing they're going to think of is Honey Ryder and Ursula Andress. The next one they're probably going to think of, excluding the newer movies, of course, would be Tatiana. And I just absolutely love the character, and thought it was portrayed very well. I mean, so well, in fact, as you said, they use it now as the screen test for anybody being in a Bond film. So I think that's fantastic, and I thought it deserved to put her into that top 7 spot.
Fair enough. I didn't dislike her, and as we noted earlier, once we broke like the top 20, top 18, I mean, it's all great stuff from here. So. Oh, yeah. This is nitpicking at this point.
Yes, very much so. So pick your nit. Who was your number 7 spot?
Number 7, I'm pretty sure, is going to shock you. In fact, I am positive that my number 7 is going to shock you. And what I'm going to say with a lot of my picks from here on in, one thing that I gave a lot of weight to is I tried to think to myself, if Bond himself was making this list, what would his input have been? And I threw some of that in there too. Not all the way through, but I think that factored in a lot. And I think you'll see that in the choices that I made. And number 7, I expect to get a lot of shit for. You were wondering if I was going to beat you down for putting her so low on your list. And that is Mrs. Paris Carver, played by Terry Hatcher in Tomorrow Never Dies.
Wow. I'm not going to give you shit because, honestly, I put her on my list as well. I thought I was going to catch hell from you for having her on my list at all. I had no clue that you would put her so high on your list. I'm surprised she made your list at all, as a matter of fact. So, far from giving you shit, I just want to know how did she get propelled just so high on your list?
I admit I was kind of surprised myself, but then I gave it a lot of thought, and I watched Tomorrow Never Dies again a few weeks ago. And she's played Bond's game before we even meet her on the screen. That much is established.
Right. She's
played it, and she lost, but she lost with some dignity, and she's not taking a shit. The first thing that she does is she slaps him. And, Bond could use a Bond girl who slaps him every so often because he deserves it. Let's be honest with ourselves. But also, you could see, even in the very brief amount of time that she's on the screen, and this is a combination of Terry Hatcher's work with the character and the chemistry she manages to establish with Pierce Brosnan, that her character really meant something to Bond in the past. And when that's brought up again, it's not an act. Even though they both want to pretend that it is, they both know it's not. And she's another one of those, like Severine and Andrea Anders, where you reach a point in the narrative where she knows that no matter what happens, she's dead. And this happens with her once Elliot Carver figures out that she's Bond's former lover. At that point, it doesn't matter what happens. She's going to be dead. She goes to his apartment, to his hotel room at Elliot's orders, of course, but she's got to know that no matter what she comes up with, that's the end for her. This is her last night on Earth. And just the way that she accepts that, the way that she carries on anyway, the way she interacts with Bond, and just she's very dignified and very strong, and that held a lot with me. So Paris Carver, Tomorrow Never Dies.
All right. Hey, like I said, I thought that that you might discount that pick altogether, but little did I know that you had it way up there. So that brings us to number 6. And 006 would be nothing without something from GoldenEye. So my pick for number 6 is Natalia Simonova, played by Isabella Scorupco. I don't know.
The U comes first. So not Scorpio, Scorupco.
Scorupco, yes. I love this character. I mean, not nearly as much as I loved Onatopp, but I love this character. I love the fact that, yes, she does end up with Bond. It's pretty obvious. But at the same time, she doesn't put up with his crap all the time. You know, she kind of throws it in his face a couple of times. You know, you're like boys with toys, you know, things like this, where she's actually standing up for herself a little bit. Yes, ultimately he has to save the day and save her, but I mean, that's Bond. That's what it does. That's what he does. But she plays a very active role in things herself, even before she meets Bond. You know, she's a fighter, and you know, having to survive what she survived to even get to the point of meeting Bond. So for me, I thought she was a fantastic character, very strong character, and not half bad to look at either. So that's my pick for number 6.
I can't fault you for it. I admit I was surprised I hadn't heard her name on your list yet. And I'm kind of surprised she made it this high. I'll spoil it for you. She's not on my list at all.
No, it's fine.
And it's not because I don't like the character. And it's not that she's reached the level where I can't call her a Bond girl anymore, as was the case in Quantum of Solace. And I'll spoil this for you too. It's the same thing with Wei Lin from Tomorrow Never Dies. She's not on my list because I can't call her a Bond girl, no matter what they tried to do to her at the end. She's a strong female character in the movie. That's it. But in the case of Natalia, yes, she's a Bond girl, but she's barely a Bond girl because she's so close to that model of the strong female character in a Bond movie who isn't necessarily she's just so close to that she was in my Twilight Zone.
All right. I will accept that reasoning for leaving her off of your list. I'll give you a pass. No, I'm just kidding.
Why, thank you, sir.
So, who did you have at number 6 then?
At number 6, I have the character whom I consider to be the greatest of the innocents. And of the innocents, I mean the people who realistically aren't badasses, are kind of in over their heads, and are basically the damsels in distress. And that would be my first Bond girl crush ever, Jane Seymour playing Solitaire in Live and Let Die. Because the character of Solitaire herself, when she's in her own niche, is one of the coolest Bond characters, whether it be Bond girls, Bond villains, just one of the coolest characters in the entire series. She's interesting.
Yes.
And I really like the concept of a tarot reader in the Bond universe. That's just awesome. And Jane Seymour plays that aspect of the character so well with such assurance. And that right air of mystery, you can totally buy her as a tarot reader. And not as a huckster tarot reader either, but as one you'd be willing to part with some money for. But then you also get to the part where as soon as she's out of that world, she's very much innocent to the ways of the world because Kananga has kept her hidden from it for what you can basically assume is her entire life, because it sounds like she was basically born into his service, and probably been kept segregated for much of it. So, and in terms of an acting performance from Jane Seymour, I like how she plays both ends of it so very well. And then, of course, the sequence we both had to discuss and have an interesting laugh at when she finally loses her virginity, and at first she's really upset over it, but there's like, on the other hand, let's do this again. I kind of like this. And again, and again, and again, and again.
That's the Bond effect, wouldn't you know it?
But the thing is, it's the Bond effect, but it's not unrealistic because it's very similar to the real-life experience of most people whom I've ever met, whether they're male or female, after they finally first had sex. It's just like, holy shit, what am I missing? So the character all around was really, really cool for me. So I had to have her in the top 10. It was very, very difficult for me not to have her in the top 5. So Solitaire, played by Jane Seymour, at number 6.
All right. Not a bad choice at all. She made my list at number 20. So definitely higher up in your mind, but that's fine. That's what this is all about. So let's jump to number 5. Finally cracking those top 5 spots. This is the best of the best of the best. Who did you have at number 5?
At number 5, I have the character whose name I did not realize was a joke until years later, Dr. Holly Goodhead, played by Lois Chiles in Moonraker. She's just cool. She's a CIA agent who holds her own along with Bond for as long as the writers are going to let her. And even when she gives in, at least it's not cheesily giving in. And at the same time, she's an astronaut. She kicks ass. She's smart. There's just so much to like about her. I think she's almost the ideal of what you could ever have hoped for out of a 70s Bond girl, as far as what was the best you could possibly expect to come out of this era of time. And Dr. Goodhead is it. And yeah, she's gorgeous, sure. But she's also got a good head on her shoulders. She's smart. She's just an awesome character. I like her. So, Dr. Holly Goodhead, number 5.
All right. I admit, Goodhead did not make my list other than the naughty names.
Wow.
Honestly, it's because there were I think the writing killed her for me, because there were so many times when she should have been so much more. And it's not the actress's fault. She did what she could with what she was given, but I felt she wasn't given enough. She really came off as unbelievable to me as that in the position that she's supposed to have. Again, she's supposed to be a CIA agent, supposed to be an astronaut, and she didn't come off as any of those things to me personally. She came off as a little too cheesy for my tastes. But it was
watching Moonraker, remember?
Well, okay, yeah. To be fair. But I just felt there were so many other great choices that I did not include her on the list. If I were to redo it, it's possible she would have made the list. And I definitely think she would have made the list if we were doing top 30, 35, something like that. But no, it's not a bad choice at all. It's certainly your opinion, and you're welcome to it.
So what's your opinion, sir?
My opinion for number 5 is the only Bond girl to have an entire movie named after her. Octopussy. Octopussy. Come on now. Yeah, she's got another name. Like, what is it? Octavia? Is her actual character's real name? Octavia Smythe, I think.
Smythe is the only part we're absolutely sure of.
Oh, okay.
It may be Octavia, maybe not. We're not quite positive, but Smythe we're sure of because we know that was her father's name.
Gotcha. Okay. So I think
because just like Plenty O'Toole, she's named after her father.
Absolutely. I found this character to be very interesting. I mean, again, it is the title character of the movie. That doesn't necessarily mean she is the most important character of the movie. She really isn't. She is important, but not the most important character. Obviously, that would be Bond. But I think it's interesting that we get to see so much of her. I mean, she's a jewel smuggler. She's a bad guy to begin with, but she's not necessarily an evil person. She's not crazy evil. She's just, trying to make a buck.
She's not bad. She's just drawn that way.
Exactly. Obviously, anyone who keeps a floating palace of luxury filled with beautiful women is going to get some extra points in my book. So there's that. But also the fact that she kind of goes from bad to good. I like that story arc. I like that, that kind of, I like it when that happens in these movies. And it does happen quite a bit. I'm not saying that this is unique by any means in the Bond universe. It is something that is almost expected. It's almost a staple of the Bond movies, is that at least one of the bad guys is going to flip-flop by the end of the movie. But I really like this character, and I think it was fantastically played by Maud Adams. I actually liked her better in this one than in her other role in the Bond universe. But so that's my pick for number 5.
All right. And what about for number 4?
Moving on to number 4, I have one that you only just recently told me is not on your list at all because you discounted her as a Bond girl, and that would be Wei Lin, played by Michelle Yeoh. Yo. Yo! In Tomorrow Never Dies. Honestly, one of the few characters that I thought was really, really well done in that movie. I mean, yeah, Paris was pretty good as well, but the rest of it was kind of iffy. But I thought Wei Lin was a great character. And I don't discount her as a Bond girl just because she also happens to be a decent character as well.
I'm not discounting her because she's a decent character. I'm discounting her because there was absolutely nothing that made her a real love interest. And the scene at the very end is so contrived that it kind of makes me want to hurl when I think about it. So I think of her just as a strong female character in a Bond movie as opposed to a Bond girl.
All right. Well, I thought of her as a Bond girl, and I thought of her as a great one. So she actually made it all the way up to number 4 for me. I just love the fact that, see, she is essentially what Jinx should have been. You know, that strong female character to be right there coinciding with Bond the entire time. And they missed the mark completely with Jinx, but I think they hit it spot on with Wei Lin.
Yeah, Wei Lin is an awesome character. She just doesn't meet my own personal criteria for this list.
All right, well, tell me who does meet your criteria, and so much so that they made it to number 4.
At number 4, I am going to stay on the same continent, and I'm going to pick Aki, played by Akiko Wakabayashi from You Only Live Twice. She, out of all of the Bond girls from the Connery era, is the one whom I think, one, had the best chemistry with Sean Connery. And so much so, she really rose past the writing. I mean, the writing isn't bad, but she gave it something more, where she is an agent of not necessarily Bond's equal, but very close stature in the Japanese Secret Service. And you can see that she establishes her bona fides in the movie, no problem. And you can tell that she's falling in love with Bond, but it's not an obnoxious sort of way. It's not that she's falling in lust with him. I think she's genuinely falling in love with him. And in an absolute rarity for Sean Connery, their chemistry is such that it looks like something could have been made a go of it if only she weren't poisoned in such spectacular fashion. So looking at it from the perspective of, we're getting to a point where who could have been, if not really a Mrs. Bond, someone you could picture as one, Aki is the first one I can think of who does.
Okay. I can
and the more times I see that movie, the more she stands out to me. And actually, the more she stands out to me, the less I think about Kissy Suzuki at all.
All right, fair enough. I did consider. I kind of went back and forth as to which one of the two to include on my list, and so it could have easily, depending on my mood at the time, have gone the other way. So I don't fault you for that at all.
All right then. Now my number 3, I'm pretty sure you're not going to fault me for either, because you've already mentioned her, and that is Maud Adams as Octopussy in Octopussy.
Surprise, surprise. Yeah. Go ahead and tell me everything you want from a Bond girl and why Octopussy gave it to you. That didn't mean to sound as dirty as it did.
That sounded incredibly dirty. And if in fact it happened, I was asleep at the time and it wasn't real, and that makes me deeply sad.
Aww.
No, Octopussy, one, again, based on the criteria I just mentioned, she is, in my ideal world of the original James Bond franchise, she is the bright light at the end of the James Bond retirement plan. She is, I think, the perfect match for Bond leaving the service and going on to other things. And I think they would have made great partners, not just in business, whether legitimate or not, but also in, well, an octopus-shaped bed and life in general. I honestly think that they make a fabulous couple, and in all senses of the word. And as a character herself, I think she's an awesome character. She's her own person. She has her own empire of gorgeous women and a circus and a smuggling operation. And, of course, this wonderful island. She's strong in and of herself. She's no weakling. She's not going to take anybody's shit. She's happy to throw things in other people's faces and laugh at them, like, "Oh, Kamal Khan, meet my new guest. No, you can't have him. Fuck off. Bye." So I love the character of Octopussy. She is an outstanding character, and really, when it comes to my top 3, they're all really, really, really close. So I can't say enough good things about her. And yes, of course, Maud Adams is gorgeous.
Well, no, absolutely can't fault you there. You only have her 2 spaces above me, but we are into the top 3. We are into the best of the best of the best of the best now, and so here is what might be the only one of my top 3 which might be any surprise to you whatsoever. And I don't think that it's going to be a surprise because you don't agree. I think it's going to be a surprise that I agree, if you know what I'm saying. Because my number 3 is Teresa Tracy DiVencio from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. One of the few women we ever see Bond truly fall in love with. Not just make love with, but actually fall in love with. It's not something that happens very often in the Bond universe, and Tracy fits the bill. She's probably the only bright light in this entire movie, as a matter of fact, because Diana Rigg's performance of her is absolutely fantastic, especially in contrast to the abomination that is the Bond performance in that movie.
Yes, and she does not love chickens.
She's not the one who loves the chickens. The chickens might love her, though. I mean, she seems friendly enough. Maybe the chickens love her. But like you said before when we were talking about this movie, the one bright side to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, it really is the courtship of James Bond. And Tracy plays the biggest part of that. It's kind of the redeeming feature of the movie, so to speak. I mean, like I said, we love all of our Bond movies, but some of them we love just a little bit less than others, and On Her Majesty's Secret Service happens to fall into that category. But even though I'm not a big fan of the movie itself, I am a huge fan of Diana Rigg's performance in it, and I am a huge fan of the character herself, even though it could have been done better in the surrounding movie could have been better, yes, but she's good enough to make it to my top 3.
I understand, and considering that I'm absolutely sure of what your number 2 and number 1 are, and in which order, I can't fault you for where you placed her.
All right.
So, let's see if I'm right about guessing who your number 2 is.
I'm almost sure that you're going to guess wrong.
All right.
I think
Who
you
is
might
it?
have I think you might have my number 1 wrong as well. So moving up to the top 2 spots, number 2 for me, the only time in which I can really say Xenia is not on a top. She's right next to it. She's right there at number 2, but she's not on the top of this list for me. Xenia on a top, played by the amazingly gorgeous Famke Janssen in GoldenEye. I love this character. I absolutely adore this character. She is so deliciously psycho. Just absolutely nuttier than a squirrel turd, out there, nut bar. It's just absolutely crazy how crazy she is. But she does it so well, and Famke does such a fantastic job playing her. You see the crazy in her eyes when she's going off. You see how much she enjoys her job, and her job happens to be killing and hurting people. Sometimes during sex, sometimes just shooting them down, mowing them down, and enjoying every second of it. Even so much so that the main bad guy looks at her with a look of like, "Whoa, dude, chill." And I just think it was a brilliant performance. I love Famke. Like I said, she's absolutely gorgeous, and I think she's actually a fairly strong actress as well. I've seen her in many things, and I've liked her in just about everything. And she still holds up to this day. I mean, she was even in, most recently, she was in some flashback scenes in the Wolverine movie, and she was still looking amazing. So, that is my number 2, and she only lost out on the top spot by a very, very, very small margin. And honestly, I mean, it came down to one category in which my number 1 pick actually beat her out. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, I want to hear about your number 2 pick.
Which confirms for me that I was absolutely right. I didn't think you'd have Xenia on the top. I knew she'd be close, but I figured you wouldn't have her on the top.
Wow, okay. So I surprised myself by not surprising you.
But my number 2, I think, will come as no surprise to you at this point. and that is Tracy DiVincenzo Bond, played by Diana Rigg in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The one woman who actually made it to the point of being really, not just in a fake ceremony, but really Mrs. Bond.
Yes.
I mean, that counts for huge amounts right there. And Diana Rigg, man, just wow. Just that performance is outstanding. How could James Bond not fall in love with a character with that performance behind her? And of course, yeah, again, Diana Rigg's gorgeous, but just awesome performance. Carries the entire movie. The only reason to watch the entire movie is this performance. And just you can see why this is the one woman who it actually happens with. Right. So you just have to pick Tracy. If Tracy is not in a top 5 list for anyone doing one of these, I'd question their sanity.
Yeah. I can understand sometimes when I look through several lists again, trying to gauge other people's opinions and see what reasonings they had behind them, and I noticed that there were quite a few lists that she did not make, and I think it comes down to the quality of the film itself. I think sometimes she's just discounted because the movie is just discounted. But I don't think people should make that mistake, because even though the movie itself was not fantastic, Die Another Day was pretty bad too, but there are some redeeming features. There are some things that were good about it. And when we're taking a look at just one individual part, in this case just the Bond girls, you can't deny that she did a fantastic job, especially considering what she had to work with all around her, which was not great. But yeah, so I don't fault you there at all. Only one place away from me. And now comes time to the moment of truth. I have a feeling, since you haven't mentioned this name yet, that
we're both going to agree on number 1. I'm absolutely positive.
It had to be. It just had to be. And so you want to say it?
You go for it.
All right. I've got Miss Vesper Lynd, played by Eva Green in Casino Royale.
Yep, and she's the money, every penny of it.
Just absolutely fantastic performance. Eva Green is just stunningly beautiful, obviously. So as far as the hotness points go, she definitely got them all. But she's also a fantastic character. And the fact is, Bond falls for her. It's one of the only other, out of my entire list, I gave 1 point to each girl who I felt Bond was actually in love with. And there are 2 people who got that 1 point. And that was Tracy and Vesper. I didn't give that point to anybody else. So she's obviously integral to the movie. She was beautifully acted. She was beautifully written. That's the gold standard from here on out, I think. Right now, that's the best of the best. That's the best there has been, and we'll see. I mean, there's been 2 movies since then. They haven't outdone it yet, so we'll see what they can come up with.
Yeah, it's just outstanding performance. And in terms of the character, she would have been Mrs. Bond if a little bit of treason hadn't been discovered at a certain point. It was going to happen. He was leaving the service for her.
Yeah.
So it was going to happen. And if you look at it from a timeline perspective, and this is something that I think the movie does even much better than the book does, in fact, makes you realize that this is the woman by whom James Bond is going to set his standards for the rest of his life, and almost always find them wanting. The only person in his eyes who came close was Tracy, and that was it. And and you can see that in the writing of this character as someone whom James Bond could fall in love with, someone who stands up to him immediately, and yet who plays his own game with him too, i.e., what is this? There are dinner jackets, and there are dinner jackets. That is the latter. It's tailored. I sized you up the moment I saw you, which is the exact same thing that he did to her. Yes. And then on the other side, you have, and we keep coming back to this, but I have to, possibly one of the best character moments, not just in a Bond movie, but in any movie ever, that shower scene. Mm-hmm. Just phenomenal emotional resonance. I mean, how could one not assign so many points to that? Just outstanding character, outstanding performance, outstanding writing. The only non-outstanding thing, ironically, is if you look at the poster art for Casino Royale, the standard one-sheet, that has got to be the worst picture of Eva Green I've ever seen.
And it's hard to take a bad picture of her. So it is extremely hard. Somebody put a lot of work into taking a bad picture of her.
But beyond that, I mean, it just realistically flawless. I can't find a thing wrong with the performance, with the writing, with the character. None of it. Just flawless.
Yeah. It was just so well done. I thought Casino Royale was just such a well done movie in general. Like when we talked about the movie, I said it's the closest I think they could possibly have come to the book without actually setting it in the book's time. Well, actually setting it in current modern time and sticking with the story and keeping all the important points there.
And yet they very deftly removed the crap. There's no sweet tang of rape.
Exactly. They were able to, like I said, they modernized it just right. I think they did such a fantastic job. Whoever was in charge of writing the screenplay or transitioning that from book to screen did a great job.
The same people who did Die Another Day. Scary, isn't it?
What? Somebody took a learning annex class in between those two. Somebody visited a library, read some books. Wow,
we call this penance.
Yeah. Wow, that's actually kind of scary to think about. But everything about the movie was fantastic, but especially Vesper. I mean, just everything about that character was perfect. I mean, she was everything you needed her to be and more, and everything Bond needed her to be and more, until, of course, a little bit of treason on the side. It always comes back to treason, doesn't it? Story of my life. Oh, but
treason or getting shot in the limo, whichever.
Yeah, I know, right? Damn you, Blofeld. Oh, wait, no, he didn't have anything to do with this one. But, it was amazing to me how great that movie was, especially compared to what we saw immediately before it. And she was a big part of that. Her performance, I mean, you give that same part to a lesser actress, and it could come off very cheap. And it didn't with her. Eva Green did such a fantastic job with the part that it really came off exactly as they wanted it to. And it was just phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's how I knew what order you had to have them in once we got to the top, because I could not, even with all of your lust for Famke Janssen, imagine any justification you could come up with to put Xenia on the top of Vesper Lynd in anything that is not a dirty context.
And even then it would be tough because, Eva Green is so amazingly gorgeous too. She is just a stunner herself. So, but I think my long-held lust for Famke would probably win out. But it would be a tough call. That would be a coin flip for sure.
So that does it for our list of best Bond girls. Now, with that in mind, is there anyone you could think of from any era who you think would make a good Bond girl? And I think that this is a tougher question than it sounds, because, at least to my mind, one of the qualifications to be a Bond girl is you can't be on the Hollywood A-list.
Right.
They've tried that. Halle Berry, for example. And it doesn't really work. The closest they've come to making it work was Kim Basinger, and she hadn't quite hit the A-list yet. We've had actresses who have gone to the A-list afterwards. Jane Seymour, for example, but you'll notice the credit, introducing Jane Seymour.
Yes.
And Eva Green, while a recognized actress before, didn't really hit the A-list until Casino Royale.
Right. Yeah, it's tough because the girls who would probably make the best Bond girls are probably fairly unknown to us. There's one off the top of my head that I would definitely say, and that's mostly because I've got a real crush going for her right now, and that would be my current favorite, Rachel Nichols, who was the green girl in the newest Star Trek movies.
And she was also Scarlet in the first G.I. Joe movie, and she was Conan's love interest in the remake of Conan the Barbarian.
Really?
And that was a body double in that movie, more's the pity.
Oh, boo. She's phenomenal in Continuum. I'm really enjoying the TV show Continuum. It's a Canadian show, but don't hold that against it. It's actually a really, really great story, and very well acted. And she actually shows a lot more acting chops in that than I thought she was capable of previously, because the only other thing I had seen her in other than Star Trek was in Criminal Minds. She was in Criminal Minds for one season, basically filling in for the JJ character, and it wasn't good. It was obvious that it was a fill-in character. Like, they're like, oh, crap, our main blonde girl is out for maternity leave, so quick, find us another blonde to fill in. And that's really all it was. It seemed like a cheap substitute for the JJ character, and so it's kind of like, she's a better actress than the part they gave her. But I would like to see her as a Bond girl, and I don't think she's A-list enough. Obviously her main thing right now is a Canadian TV show. So I mean, there you go.
Okay. There are two who I can think of off the top of my head. One is Hayley Atwell, who played Captain America's love interest in Captain America: The First Avenger.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
I thought that she was really, really phenomenal in that role. In fact, way better than anyone, I think, could have expected out of that kind of role. And I'm surprised I'm not seeing more of her since then, because she did such a great job. And I think that she would do really well in an Eva Green type Bond girl role. And then another one who comes to mind is Rinko Kikuchi, who plays the evil witch in 47 Ronin, and she was also the Jaeger co-pilot, I believe her name was Mako, in Pacific Rim. I think she would also be a very good Bond girl.
I'll have to check those out, because I haven't seen either of those movies yet. So
Pacific Rim is a lot of fun. The thing to remember is you are watching a movie that has the premise of gigantic Godzilla-sized monsters fighting gigantic Godzilla-sized robots. Accept it for what it is, and it's a blast. You're going to lose a little bit now because you're not watching it on the big screen, because when you're watching things that are supposed to be that much larger than life, it helps when they're that much bigger than you.
Yes.
But even then, it's still a fun movie. 47 Ronin was not as epic as it was supposed to be, or should have been, but for a fairy tale, it's not bad. I mean, it's all right. I don't hate on it like a lot of people did. But and out of that movie, Rinko Kikuchi is the best part. Just phenomenal as the evil witch.
All right. I'll have to check that out. I've been wanting to see 47 Ronin. I've been putting off seeing Pacific Rim because it's not in the theaters anymore, and typically when I find time to watch movies, it's usually, on my phone. So it's like, yeah, I've got a phone with a big screen, but it's not that big, and so watching something like that when I know the main aspect is going to be the visual effects, I've just kind of put it off. But I'll have to give it a shot and see what else I could come up with.
Yeah, they're worth your time. They're nice distractions.
So if you could go back in time, who would you have liked to see in like the 70s or 80s time frame that didn't get a chance to play Bond girl, but who would you have liked to have seen in that role?
See, that's where it gets a lot tougher. Because, okay, now I technically have the freedom to pick somebody before they made the A-list, but were they quite ready for it, or was the talent too much? Because, like, on the one hand, if you're looking at the femme fatale factor, I mean, ultimate femme fatale is Lauren Bacall. Yeah, no way. She's not a Bond girl. Never. Not a shot. And if we could put Ingrid Bergman from the mid-40s, somehow have her skip aging for 20 years into the mid-60s, she would have been interesting across from Sean Connery.
All right. I'm having a tough time imagining it, but I'll give that one to you. I'll have to watch something of hers from back then. And
Casablanca, man. Casablanca.
I haven't seen that movie in ages and ages, but yeah. Okay, that would be interesting. That would be interesting for sure.
And then just not necessarily as a Bond girl, but even just as an ally or a henchman, or maybe as a Bond girl. I mean, this is someone who could play that in any aspect, really. Sometime in the 70s, Pam Grier in a Bond movie would be very interesting.
It would be crazy. but not in a bad way. I think that would be a Xena Onatop type of crazy, and I think that would be kind of good. But yeah, absolutely. The thing with Bond girls is I think any actress has the potential to be that. It's just a matter of if they're given the right writing and they act it the way it should be. And that's, I think when we've seen it fail is when they've either tried to take themselves too seriously or not seriously enough. You get the Jinxes of the world when they try to do attitude over substance. So it'll be interesting to see who's coming up next. Like you said,
someone else who I think would get it in terms of what needs to be done, how to play it, and would have been just about exactly right during the Pierce Brosnan era. Somebody who I personally like very much. One of my favorite interviews that I've ever done for my site, Monique Parent, who was in and still actively working over 100 different movies, most of which are in the erotic thriller category. I think she's got the idea of what it takes to be, especially a bad Bond girl, down, and I think she'd have been interesting given the chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly the type of actress they should probably be looking for, is that kind of, like you said, hasn't made the A-list yet, but has the talent necessary to pull it off, and maybe use that Bond girl role to propel them to the A-list.
So, any other thoughts on Bond girls, Mr. Dewey?
No, I think we pretty well covered it with our lists. Again, just to remind everybody, if you have any comments about our lists, about our picks, anybody you think we missed or anybody you think we gave too much credit to, do feel free to contact us. Of course, you can comment on this post on our website at hermajestiespod.com. You can also follow us and message us on Twitter at hermajestiespod. We're also on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/guess what, Her Majesty's Pod. And you can also email me directly, Eric at hermajestiespod.com.
And you can email me at ziggy@cinemaontherocks.com. You can also find me on Twitter at cinemaotr.
I'm also on Twitter at Eric J. Dewey. I'm trying to get back into using the Twitter more. So, hey, help me out by finding me, following me, and tweeting at me. I'll reply, and that'll get me back in the habit of tweeting again. So help me out, folks.
Tweet like a bird, Dewey.
So what are we going to be talking about the next time they hear from us?
Well, the next time that they hear from us, it's going to be just about our 1-year anniversary as a podcast.
What?
And we will be talking about what we had hoped to talk about last month, but technical difficulties got in the way. We will be talking about the venues and locations of James Bond and the villains. So location. That's what's coming up on the next episode of Her Majesty's Secret Podcast. But for right now, you've been listening to Mayday, Mayday, Pussy Galore. It's the Bond Girls episode. I'm Ziggy Berkeley.
And I'm Eric Dewey.
And this has been Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, only on the Fern.
This has been another great presentation by the 4-Eyed Radio Network. You can find more information at 4eyedradio.com.